Chapter 1579. Pausing for a moment, Teacher Yuan explained, "Sincerely, everyone says that a school is a place to educate and educate. In the process of education, as a teacher, we do need to take up the responsibility of educating our children. But this responsibility is a responsibility, and as a parent, we have to shoulder it. In school, the 4 seasons of the year, 2 semesters, 7 hours a day. The rest of the time, we spend with our parents. In terms of education, parents also have an undeniable responsibility. But as you know, which child these days isn't precious? If the teachers are strict with their education, those parents who dote on their children will trample over the school's threshold. Especially Lin Feng's parents. They are especially tricky and cannot be provoked. I don't know how to educate them. I can only do my part. But in this aspect, I especially like Yu. Yu is young, but he is very mature and sensible. In class, he is obedient and respectful to his teachers. I especially like him. So, as a teacher, I can only hope that you don't let your child suffer too much in this aspect. More importantly, I don't want you to offend the Lin family. Maybe you will say that I am snobbish, but this is the cruel reality of society. I really have no choice. I am doing this for Yu's sake." This long speech sounded sincere, but Muyaja felt that it was too laughable and pompous. This kind of reason was not valid at all. Yu's face was also cold. From the beginning to the end, he remained silent and did not say a word. As he watched Teacher Yuan patiently persuade him, he felt that it was ridiculous. Did you know why he worked so hard? He worked so hard to live a life far away from these idiots. Yu pursed his lips and said, unhappily, "Teacher Yuan, I don't like what you are saying. What do you mean by can't afford to offend them?" Yu, why are you disobedient?" Teacher Yuan was so angry that she was about to cry. She helplessly glared at him. She sighed, turned her head, and said to Muyaja, "Yu and Lin Feng don't see eye to eye. Wait until we resolve this peacefully. I'll see if we can separate Yu and Lin Feng. Then we'll be in different classes. Anyway, I think that Yu is a very likable child. No matter which class he is in, the children are all willing to play with him. But this Lin Feng is an accident." Class allocation? The corners of Muyaja's lips curled up coldly. "I don't think there's a need to divide classes. After today's incident, he would transfer Yu to the same school as Xiao Chen. Yu went to this primary school because of the school district. Because of Yu's household registration, he went to this primary school. He didn't expect that the teachers in this school were so bad. Coincidentally, he was transferred to the same primary school as Xiao Chen. The 2 brothers could be companions and take care of each other. Compared to Yu, Xiao Chen was like the king of the mountain in school. Perhaps it was because he was handsome, so all the girls liked him. Perhaps it was also because he had a strong physique, so all the boys in the school admired him and were willing to be his fans. Xiao Chen's school was funded by an education corporation that was working with Mu Group. Mu Group had also invested a large sum of money in the education of the teachers. The standards of the education were outstanding. In addition, with Xiao Chen taking care of him, Yu didn't have to worry about being bullied. Chapter 1580. Teacher Yuan looked surprised. She couldn't hold it in any longer and said bluntly, "Yu's father, I'll be honest with you. Previously, there was another child who didn't get along with Lin Feng. The parents of the 2 children got into a fight because of everyone. In the end, both parents refused to back down. In the end, Lin Feng's father stepped in and used some tricks. In the end, the child had no choice but to transfer to another school. That's why I told you not to go against the Lin family." Muyaja closed his eyes impatiently. He couldn't control himself, and was about to explode when he heard Teacher Yuan's words. The door was suddenly pushed open. It was the principal of the school. She hadn't expected that the principal would be alarmed by this incident. Teacher Yuan stood up in shock. She said in a trembling voice, "Principal Wu, why are you here?" "This is—" Principal Wu glanced at Mu Yaja and asked, "This is Yu's father, Mr. Mu." "Oh, nice to meet you, Mr. Mu." Principal Wu greeted him indifferently. Then he regained his solemn expression and said, "Teacher Yuan, please come to my office for a moment." After saying that, he turned around and left. Teacher Yuan suddenly felt uneasy. She said goodbye to Mu Yaja and left in a hurry. The moment the door closed, Yu suddenly covered the back of Mu Yaja's hand. "Daddy, why did you come to school? I remember that you have a meeting in the morning. Why don't you go back to work? I'll take care of things here. It won't be a problem." Yu was considerate of him. He didn't want to delay his trip. Mu Yaja lowered his head and looked at him with his deep eyes. He asked coldly, "Has it always been like this?" "Huh. Everyone says that about you." Yu was stunned. He was probably referring to the fact that for the past few years, people had been saying that he had a mother but no father. He didn't want to talk about it. He only said, "They all think that I'm an illegitimate child." Illegitimate child. Mu Yaja suddenly sounded a little angry. "Mommy didn't explain? How do you explain that? It's obviously a humiliation. If Mommy tries to explain, wouldn't she be asking for humiliation?" Yu sighed. "Actually, it's not their fault." "Why?" "That's because even I myself thought that they were right. You had always thought that he was an illegitimate child, the kind that could not be exposed to the public. Even so, he didn't blame his mother at all. He was very grateful. If it wasn't for his mommy, he wouldn't have been able to see such a beautiful world. It was his mommy who raised him. No matter how others slandered him or looked at him coldly, he did not care at all. The only one he cared about was his mommy. However, his tone could not hide his disappointment. Mu Yaja's heart was violently shaken. He immediately blurted out, "You're not." Mu Yaja gently caressed his little face. You're not an illegitimate child. You've never been one." He was anxious to let this little guy know that he was not an illegitimate child. He was not someone who could not be exposed to the public. "Daddy really didn't know about your existence for the past 6 years. When Mu Yaja thought about how Yu had talked about those humiliating things in such a calm tone, he felt as if his heart had been pierced by a sharp sword. Yes, his heart ached. His heart ached for Yun Shirshir. Chapter 1581. The guilt in his heart made him feel a little unbearable. He suddenly felt that he could never make up for the past 7 years of emptiness. Yu was only 7 years old. He should have had a beautiful and carefree childhood, but because of the lack of fatherly love, he had suffered so much. He didn't dare to imagine how painful it must be for a child to face such mockery and ridicule. Mu Yaja gently caressed Yu's rosy cheeks, his slender fingers brushing against his delicate skin. Then he said in a low voice, "I'm sorry that Daddy has made you suffer for so many years. It's all Daddy's fault." Yu was stunned. He had never thought that Mu Yaja, who was usually not good with words, would say such warm words to him. In his heart, Mu Yaja had always been a cold and dignified figure. It seemed that he would never say such touching words. However, Yu was really touched by Mu Yaja's heartfelt words. He could tell that every word that Mu Yaja said was from the bottom of his heart, so much so that he forgot to react for a moment. He just stared at him in a daze, as if he couldn't believe it. The pain in Mu Yaja's eyes couldn't be faked. Yu saw it all. Daddy's heart was aching for him. This kind of feeling was really very warm. The position of the heart suddenly became warm and comfortable. He didn't know whether to be happy or worried. He was happy that Daddy cared for him. This feeling made him feel very warm. Very good. What made him worried was the dejected look on the man's face, which stung him a little. His heart ached. Muyaja didn't know what was going on in his little head. His handsome eyes curved slightly as he gently kissed his forehead. Listen, in the future, with Daddy around, no one can bully you. Yu, on the other hand, smiled when he heard that. An unconcealable smile appeared on his adorable little face. Muyaja was stunned. What are you smiling about? Yu stopped smiling and raised his head to look at him. Pursing his lips, he opened up his heart to him, which was a rare sight to see. Daddy, do you know? I'm so happy that you're here today. Muyaja was taken aback by her words. You leaned slightly into his embrace and lay on his chest. At an angle that Muyaja couldn't see, the tenderness in his eyes seemed to overflow. He took the initiative to throw himself into the man's arms, but the latter's body inadvertently stiffened a little. You actually hugged him. In the past, in his heart, he was actually a little excited. His son had hugged him. This was probably the highest reward, Yu. After a moment's pause for a moment, this kind of hug was rare and precious. Daddy, do you know? I hope that you'll be the one to attend the parent-teacher conference, not Mommy. Okay, I promise you that I'll attend your parent-teacher conferences in the future. His promise was as solemn as a vow made at a wedding. His expression was solemn and respectful. This time, however, Yu was so amused that he lost his cool. Daddy, you're so serious. You're so cute. Muyaja, actually, in the past, Mommy and I relied on each other for survival and were always looked down upon. I didn't feel wronged. I just felt indignant. Chapter 1582. Yu continued. Grandpa used to ask Mommy to find a good man because he said that if the family didn't have a man of indomitable spirit, others would look down on us. But Mommy has always wanted to be strong. She has always been alone because of my feelings. So I thought that if I didn't have Daddy, I would have to be strong to protect Mommy and this family. Pausing for a moment, a smile appeared on his adorable face. But it's different now. You lifted his head from his arms and looked at him seriously. Daddy, I have you. Muyaja looked at him tenderly. Suddenly, he stroked his cheek gently. Yu placed his hand on the back of his father's hand. Daddy, you will always be with Mommy and me, right? Yes, Muyaja said seriously. I will do it. That's great. But Daddy, if you were to resolve today's matter, how would you resolve it? You suddenly asked. He was a little curious about how his father would resolve this matter. If he hadn't stepped in this time with his methods, he would have definitely bullied the Lin family. Now that he had the ability and capital to do so, he didn't need to be bullied by others anymore. But since his father had stepped in, he would naturally let him handle it. When Muyaja heard this, he said domineeringly, I won't let anyone who bullies my son off. Yu was once again amused. Very good. That's very Daddy's style. As he spoke, he suddenly asked, quietly, do you know why that brat Lin Feng doesn't see eye to eye with me? Why? Because he has a crush on a girl in class. She's always following me around all day long. That brat is probably jealous, so he's always looking for trouble with me. Yu's tone was as mature as an adult's. It didn't match his adorable appearance at all. Muyaja's lips twitched violently. He was still so young, but he already had the entanglement of love and hate in the adult world. Kids these days are so precocious. Because of a girl, he actually started to imitate adults to fight for a girl's affection. Are there many girls who like you in class? Muyaja brought up Yu's troubles. He let out a melancholy sigh, and the expression on his face instantly turned gloomy. Yeah, a lot. It's very annoying. Isn't it great? Mu Yaja was very satisfied. Just like me back then. What's so good about it? Those girls are always chattering around me. I don't like it at all. Yu said, honestly, I like quiet girls. He liked quiet girls, but he didn't like girls who always surrounded him and weren't reserved at all. Although children at this age might not know anything about love, they simply liked him and wanted to play with him because they were moved. But there were too many people chasing after him, and he couldn't handle it. The girl whom Lin Feng liked was recognized as the cutest girl in the class. He had been in love with her for a long time, but compared to the filthy Lin Feng who played all day long, she preferred the elegantly dressed Yu, who looked like a little prince. Because of this, many girls in class were jealous of Yu. Chapter 1583. As the father and son were talking, the door was pushed open. The principal led Lin Feng's mother and Lin Feng into the room, followed by teacher Yuan. The father and son raised their heads and saw Lin Feng's mother glaring at them like a tiger watching its prey. It seemed like the principal and Lin Feng's mother had reached a consensus. They were on the same side. As soon as they entered the room, Lin Feng's mother's expression was even more domineering than before. There was a provocative look in her eyes. As soon as she sat down, she announced arrogantly, I've already called my husband. He'll be here soon. She looked as if she was waiting for her husband to come and do something to them. In other words, she was telling him to wait. Mu Yaja remained expressionless, while Yu looked disgusted. This was a classic example of using power to oppress others. The principal exchanged a few pleasantries and comforted them. Then he said to Mu Yaja, Mr. Mu Yaja, is it convenient for me to say a few words? He had talked to Lin Feng's mother before. Lin Feng's mother had said that they couldn't let this matter go. They had to give her an explanation. She had to regain her dignity. The principal agreed and promised that he would ask Yu's parents to give her child an explanation and apologize. Therefore, he wanted to take advantage of Lin Feng's mother's situation. He wanted to help Lin Feng's mother regain her dignity. Mu Yaja said coldly, It's not convenient. The principal was stunned. What do you mean? Mu Yaja said coldly, Didn't you ask if it's convenient for me to say a few words? I said, It's not convenient. His arrogant reply left the principal dumbstruck. Naturally, he did not know Mu Yaja. He was just the principal of the school. With his status, he had never even seen Mu Yaja, let alone get close to him. When he saw that Mu Yaja was young, he thought that he was a youngster. Therefore, he wanted to use his status as an elder to oppress him. He did not expect to be humiliated at the beginning. The principal said, Mr. Mu, you're being unreasonable. Mu Yaja smiled coldly. Reason is for people to listen to. The principal and Lin Feng's mother didn't know what to say. When Yu heard this, he could not stop laughing. He finally understood who he had inherited his poisonous tongue from. It turned out that he had inherited it from his dear daddy. Who would have thought that his father's venomous tongue would be so frightening? Lin Feng's mother said impolitely, I advise you to keep your mouth clean. Don't make the situation too ugly when my husband comes and embarrass you. The moment she opened her mouth, it was a threat. Her bearing was overbearing. Her attitude was high and mighty. Yu laughed. He raised his head and snickered. Daddy, this auntie actually said that she's going to embarrass you. That's amazing. Although he was snickering, he did not hide the mockery on his face. His voice was not soft either. Therefore, everyone present could hear his mocking laughter loud and clear. Lin Feng's mother was completely enraged. After living for so long, she had actually been mocked by a 7-year-old child. She was flustered and exasperated as she shouted at Mu Yaja, "Hey, look at your son. Aren't you going to discipline him? Look at how young he is. What kind of nonsense is he spouting?" Chapter 1584. I don't know how you educate your child. Not only is he like those delinquents in society, fighting and causing trouble, but he's also rude to his elders. He doesn't know how to be polite at all. It's the father's fault for not teaching him well. I really don't know how you teach your child. Her rude words made teacher Yuan frown. However, she remained silent and did not interrupt. She did not want to get into trouble again. Yu suddenly snorted and asked, "Auntie, have you studied before?" "What do you mean?" Yu said coldly. "I just want to ask, do you know what the idiom frog in a well means?" Lin Feng's mother was furious. Yu smiled. "Look at your expression. You don't know what this idiom means, right? Sai, you're so uncultured." She turned to Mu Yaja. "Why don't you teach him a lesson?" Mu Yaja acted as if he did not hear her. He lowered his head and pinched Yu's cheek. "Good son, don't tell the truth." Buffed. Yu was amused. However, he looked disgusted. "Daddy, the teacher has always taught us that good children don't lie." He paused and continued, "Auntie, it was your good son who started it. As the saying goes, don't do to others what you don't want done to you. You're accusing me of violence and fighting, but why don't you think about it? It was clearly your good son who started it. Even if it was school violence, it wasn't caused by me. The law calls it self-defense. You understand? I heard that Lin Feng's father is a judge. Since you're from a legal background, are you ignorant of the law? You keep saying that you want my daddy to give you an explanation. Before that, shouldn't you also give me an explanation? Why did you raise such a narrow-minded son, who uses vulgar words all the time? You weren't there at the time. How can you judge the right and wrong based on your words alone? It's not up to you to decide whether I discipline him well or not, right? Before you say such things, you should look at your own status. Don't make a fool of yourself. You're really, really disgraceful. Lin Feng's mother was furious. She thought to herself, this father and son are really refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. I've said all the good things I want to say. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. The son is so arrogant, and the father is also so arrogant. Aren't you afraid of suffering in this society? As she scolded the man, she nagged like a shrew on the streets. I'll give you one more chance. Are you apologizing or not? Ha! But there's no use your apology now. I want you to bring the child to my house and apologize in person. Otherwise, I won't acknowledge this debt. Oh, Mu Yaja sneered, his lips curling into a cold, impatient smile. Madam Lin, are you threatening me? Chapter 1585. She was starting to get excited. Therefore, some unpleasant words came out of her mouth. As the saying goes, nothing can be accomplished without rules. Mr. Mu, you should have heard of this saying before. If you do something wrong, as a parent, shouldn't you apologize? Let's put aside the fact that your son injured my baby. Shouldn't you teach your son a lesson for saying such outrageous things? Auntie, you should know that when a child does something wrong, he should be taught a lesson. Why don't you teach your child well? As for me, you don't have to worry about me. Lin Feng's mother was trembling with anger after hearing you use words. She suddenly stood up and walked out of the door. She picked up her phone and made a call. As they were separated by a door, no one knew who she was calling. However, they could vaguely hear her angry voice. Where are you? Husband, come here quickly. Let's teach this father and son, who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, a lesson. Mu Yaja's hearing was amazing, so he caught her words. His lips curled up coldly, but it was a smile. When Lin Feng's mother returned to the office, she was even more arrogant than before. She looked as if she was looking down on everyone. Her eyes were full of contempt and mockery. "I don't want to reason with you. My husband will be here soon. If you have anything to say it to him directly. Don't blame me for not reminding you. My husband is a judge in the city hall. You'd better be respectful, or else. This was clearly a threat. After saying that, Lin Feng was about to sit down proudly. Yu mocked him. Typical nouveau riche temperament. It was said that Lin Feng's mother was called Wang Guimiao. Her family was nouveau riche. Her family used to live in a village in the city. Her ancestors had left a few acres of land for the younger generation to build houses. When the land was demolished, they received tens of millions of yuan as compensation. They used it to start a business. It was said that when Lin Feng's father fell in love with Wang Guimiao, he was still a poor university student. Later on, with her support, he became what he was today. The Lin family would bring honor to their ancestors. You had already figured out the Lin family's background. Now, it seemed that she was a typical nouveau riche. When Wang Guimiao heard this, she almost couldn't sit still. Just as she was about to flare up, she forcefully held it in. Humph! Little vials spawn. She would see how her husband would deal with them when he arrived. She couldn't wait to see Yu's father bow down in front of her husband. When he looked at Mu Yaja again, he saw that Mu Yaja had an indifferent look on his face. He was sitting elegantly on the chair and exuded a noble aura, just like a noble. Wang Guimiao glanced at him, but in her heart she sneered. This man, he is quite good at pretending. Let's see if he can continue pretending when her husband is here. Soon, footsteps could be heard outside the door. A middle-aged man in a coat knocked on the door and walked in. The man was Lin Feng's father, Lin Anghua. Chapter 1586. One was standing, while the other was sitting. Even though he had the advantage of height, Lin Anghua could still feel an unusual sense of oppression from him. Noble, elegant, unruly, and insufferably arrogant. Even though he was just sitting there, expressionless and cold, when the man casually raised his eyes and shot his gaze over, there was a kind of imposing aura that pressured him without being angry. Lin Anghua actually felt an invisible pressure from the young and shockingly handsome man's eyes. He secretly avoided Mu Yaja's scrutiny and turned his gaze to the side, but there was some anger between his eyebrows. This man's gaze was too intimidating. However, he was a little suspicious. This man looked very familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before. However, his impression of him was not too deep. This time, he had taken some time off from his busy case, so his mind was still a little muddled. Seeing that it was him, the principal immediately stood up. His expression changed. His face was flushed, but his eyes were full of flattery and pandering. Even though it was restrained, it still gave people an indescribable feeling of discomfort. Judge Lin, you're here." There was no trace of the bureaucratic tone that he had in front of Mu Yaja. One level higher than the other. One level higher than the other. This was very true. However, Lin Anghua said, Principal, don't call me that. Now that I'm not in the court, you can't call me that." The principal smiled and nodded, but the flattery in his eyes did not decrease at all. He was still cheerfully welcoming Lin Anghua and waiting for him to sit down. When Wang Guimiao saw him, she immediately went up to him. "Hubby," there was a hint of rebuke and coquettishness in her voice, which caught Yu off guard and caused goosebumps to appear all over his body. What a terrifying voice. Damn it! However, Lin Anghua's face still maintained a trace of restraint. After all, he was the chief judge of the Hall of Political Affairs. He was born with a proud background and had been doing things in the court for many years. As a result, His style of speech was full of strong bureaucratic tone. He was rigid and dignified. He cleared his throat and said in a deep voice, "What is it? Your son is being bullied by other children in school." Wang Guimiao complained. "Lin Feng, come here," said Lin Angua. Lin Feng obediently walked over. "What happened, Dad?" Lin Feng lowered his head. As soon as he said that, tears started rolling down his cheeks. "You're a man. Don't cry." Lin Angua pretended to reprimand him, then asked with concern, "Tell me, what's the matter?" He hit me. Yun Tianyu hit me." Lin Feng pointed at Yu as his aggrieved tears rolled down his cheeks even more violently. When Lin Angua heard this, he immediately pulled him in front of him and carefully examined him. He originally thought that it was only his head that was disfigured, but he did not expect that his body was full of scars. It was beyond his expectations. When Lin Angua saw the bruises on Lin Feng's body, he was furious. He raised his head and looked at Mu Yaja. "Are you Yun Tianyu's father?" Mu Yaja, however, nodded nonchalantly. "Yes." "Hubby, let me tell you, not only is Yun Tianyu's father arrogant, but his words are also very harsh." Wang Guimiao exaggerated the story and then crossed her arms in front of her chest and gave an ultimatum. "Anyway, you can deal with this matter as you see fit." Chapter 1587. Lin Angua asked again, "Did he hit you first, or did you hit him first?" Of course, it was that uneducated guy who hit him first. Our Feng Feng has always been a good boy. He never causes trouble. In the end, our Feng Feng was framed and accused of being the one who attacked first. How is that possible? Feng Feng has always been protective of his classmates. Lin Angua nodded. "I understand." Wang Guimiao was secretly pleased. Her husband was amazing. He had just arrived, and the situation was completely under his control. Look at how Yu's father was so scared that he didn't say a word. He must have been scared out of his wits. Seeing that the situation had changed, she immediately put pressure on the principal. "Principal, you have to deal with this matter fairly. Yu's father, you have to give us an explanation today. First, you have to apologize to our child. Then, you have to take our child to the hospital for a full body checkup and apologize. This is a must. Then, you have to pay for the medical fees, nutrition fees, and compensation for our Fengfeng's psychological damage. You have to be clear about all these. If you have a proper attitude, we won't pursue this matter further." Lin Angua walked to Mu Yaja and sneered. "Sir, tell me your name first." Mu Yaja looked up and said slowly, "Mu Yaja." His voice was clear and cold. He had the elegance of a noble. However, the moment his voice fell, Lin Angua was fiercely stunned. Mu Yaja? This name was too familiar. These 3 words were like a towering mountain. They resounded like thunder in his ears. How could he not have heard of it before? Could it be the same name? It couldn't be the real Mu Corporation, right? Lin Angua wanted to get lucky and said, "Your name is so familiar. It's exactly the same as the name of the crown prince of the Mu family." "Ha ha," Mu Yaja sneered. "There's no one else with this name in the capital." Lin Angua was stunned again. There was a hint of panic on his face. He stared at him blankly without blinking. He didn't dare to make any wild guesses. After a long while, he spoke in a provocative manner, but changed the way he addressed him. "You are what?" Lin Angua looked a little uneasy. "Are you the Chairman Mu of the Mu Corporation?" Mu Yaja was a little impatient. "You asked for my name, and I'll tell you. If you have anything to say, just say it. Don't waste my time. My time is more precious than yours." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Angua's eyes widened, and he staggered back a step. His eyebrows collapsed helplessly. This man's attitude was very clear. It looked like this time his blind wife had offended a big shot that she shouldn't have offended. The person in front of him was probably the mysterious and noble crown prince of the Mu Corporation. At first, Lin Angua had noticed him when he first entered the door. He only felt that this man had an arrogant aura, and he had the noble aura of a high-ranking official, as if he was a member of a powerful family. However, at this moment, he did not realize where he had seen this handsome face before. Chapter 1588. The Mu family's existence in the capital was enough to shake the entire financial market. As the #1 aristocratic family in the capital, the Mu family's inexhaustible wealth aside, the Mu family's inextricable connections between the black and white was enough to make him weak in the knees. He could offend anyone, but the Mu's offending them was akin to cutting off his own path of retreat. Lin Angua wanted to cry, but had no tears. He stood in front of Mu Yaja with a proper posture, but his face was no longer as haughty as before. Instead, his expression was filled with complicated conjecture. Faced with this suffocating atmosphere, for a moment he did not know how to resolve it, even though he had been in the bureaucracy for a long time. When Wang Guimiao saw this strange scene, she was stunned. Then she walked forward with her arms crossed. She didn't know what had happened, but when she saw Lin Angua's dazed appearance, she felt strange. "Hubby, what's wrong with you?" She was even more confused when she saw his pale face. She could not help but push him. "What's wrong?" Yu chuckled. "He's scared silly." Wang Guimiao was infuriated when she heard that. Things were different now. With Lin Angua around, she was confident that she had someone to rely on. Hence, she spoke without thinking. "Little b asterisk st asterisk rd, shut up. You don't have the right to speak here." Hearing this, Mu Yaja's eyes shot up and swept over him with a sharp gaze. Lin Angua watched with trepidation. Wang Guimiao's words scared him so much that he almost suffocated. How could he have expected that his wife would be so ignorant as to not know how to size up the situation? She opened her mouth and spoke rudely. He immediately became furious and scolded, "Shut up! Don't be unreasonable." It was important to know one's place, but his wife did not know it at all. Thinking that he was teaching Yun Tianyu a lesson for her, she echoed, "That's right. Shut up." Yu suddenly felt like laughing as he looked at his wife, as if she were a pitiful worm. Behind him, Mu Yaja's face turned uglier. Lin Angua gritted his teeth, turned his head abruptly, and gave his wife a tight slap. Smack! "I told you to shut up." With that, he turned to face Mu Yaja with cold sweat dripping down his face. "Chairman Mu, I'm sorry. My wife has been presumptuous in front of you and said something she shouldn't have. A great man won't hold a grudge against a petty person, so please don't take it to heart. Just treat it as if she's spouting nonsense." His tone was full of flattery. Lin Angua looked at him in cold sweat. Observing his expression, he felt that being in the king's company of a tiger. Everyone, especially Teacher Yuan, was stunned into silence by the sudden turn of events. She thought that, with Lin Angua's arrival, the boy's father would understand her words and begin to lower his head, apologize, and apologize to the other party appropriately. As the chief judge of the Hall of Politics and Law, Lin Angua had several titles above his head. His status was lofty, and he had an unquestionable majesty. What about now, though? Why was Lin Angua the first to bow down to Mu Yaja? The principal was even more bewildered. He had no idea what was going on. Wang Guimiao felt the most aggrieved. Chapter 1589. Most importantly, even until now, she still didn't understand how this mysterious slap came about. Why did he slap her? Did she say anything wrong? What kind of insanity was this Lin Angua suffering from? Was he crazy? Him. Why did he slap her for no reason? Wang Guimiao turned around angrily and pulled Lin Angwa's arm. With a red face, she roared with grievance and hysteria, "Lin Angwa, have you lost your mind?" Lin Angwa looked at her and sighed helplessly. He rolled his eyes at the ceiling and held his forehead. He turned around and pointed at Wang Guimiao. For a moment, he was so angry that he could not say anything. Wang Guimiao was even more confused. She held back her tears and yelled at him, "Say something! Say something! Why did you slap me for no reason? What's wrong with you? Stop talking. Be quiet and sit back down obediently. Don't say anything. Do you understand?" She was like a clown. Not only did she make a fool of herself, but Lin Angwa was also afraid that she would continue to blabber and offend the Mu group. Then, her whole family would have no way out. It was not easy for him to get to where he was today. He did not want his bright future to be ruined because of such a small matter. His worry was not unfounded. There were people from the Mu family in the city hall. Although Lin Angwa was a judge and had a good reputation, this man's words could make all his hard work go down the drain. However, he really did not know what to do now that the situation had developed to this stage. He could only hope that his wife, who had always been restless, would not add fuel to the fire. He did not want things to get out of hand when the time came. However, Wang Guimiao did not understand his good intentions. Instead, she questioned him sternly. "Wang Guimiao, I want to ask you, what's wrong with you?" Lin Angwa looked at her in disbelief. He was so impulsive that he wanted to strangle her to death. Why was she so ignorant? Was she trying to get him killed? She was a burden. He looked at her. She could not do anything right, but she was good at ruining things. "You have no right to speak here. Get out of my way." "Lin Angwa, don't be too. Sit there." Lin Angwa's tone suddenly rose, and his sharp eyes signaled. Wang Guimiao's heart suddenly skipped a beat. She was afraid of him from the bottom of her heart. The look in his eyes and the look on his face showed that he was really angry. No matter how unwilling Wang Guimiao was, she could only sit to the side dejectedly and listen obediently, although she didn't know what she had done wrong. Wang Guimiao could only sit to the side and listen obediently. Lin Angwa turned around and apologized to Mu Yaja with an incomprehensible reverence. "Chairman Mu, I'm sorry. My wife is insensible and has offended you. Please forgive her." Offended? Mu Yaja cocked a brow, but his voice was filled with an irresistible authority. "Judge Lin, how can I dare to take the blame? She just said that she's going to teach us a lesson." Lin Angwa was so scared that he almost suffocated. He immediately shouted, "How dare she?" "Chairman Mu, she was just joking." Yu crossed her arms and did not give him a way out. "She was just joking. She even called me a little b*****. Chapter 1590. The principal watched from the side, trembling with fear. Seeing how respectful Lin Angwa was to Mu Yaja, he knew how to read people's expressions and size up the situation. Seeing how respectful Lin Angwa was to Mu Yaja, he thought to himself, how important must this man be? Hence, he kept quiet and did not dare to act rashly. Teacher Yuan's displeasure had also disappeared. When she looked at Mu Yaja, there was a hint of surprise in her eyes. It seemed that this man must be someone of high status. This Lin Angwa must have found out about his identity, which was why he was so respectful towards him. She recalled how she had advised him to give in to the Lin family and not offend them. Although this man did not show it on his face, the noble and awe-inspiring look in his eyes was still fresh in her memory. At first, she had thought that this man did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, but now that she thought about it, she shuddered. How many things had she said that she should not have said in front of this important person? She did not know if he would take it to heart. At this thought, Teacher Yuan trembled with fear, as if a cat's paw was scratching her heart. She desperately wanted to know who this man was. Why don't we do this? Chairman Mu. Lin Ongwa thought for a moment. Suddenly, he carefully probed. I'll ask my wife and son to apologize to your son. I only hope that you won't take my wife's outrageous words to heart. Mu Yaja did not speak. He could not be bothered to argue with him. The boy, however, asked with great interest, How are you going to make amends? How? Lin Ongwa was stunned. You raised her eyebrows and asked with a smile, Kneel down? This. However, Lin Ongwa hesitated. In the end, Wang Guimiao could not sit still any longer. She stood up abruptly and said furiously, Ngwa, are you possessed by a ghost? Do you really want me to kneel down? Are you going to agree to such an unreasonable condition? Wang Guimiao felt that Yu Yu's condition was unreasonable. What was even more unreasonable was that her husband was actually hesitating on whether to agree to it. What was the meaning of this? This was simply unbelievable. Yu asked, Is it too much? Isn't that what you said before? You said that you wanted my father and I to kneel down and apologize to you. Weren't you very confident? Such blatant humiliation was still fresh in his memory. Although she didn't say it in front of Mu Yaja, Wang Guimiao shouted it in the office before Mu Yaja came. He heard it loud and clear. Mu Yaja frowned. She said that. Lin Ongwa's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly turned around and asked, Did you really say that? Wang Guimiao panicked. She did say that before, but those were just words spoken in a fit of anger. How could they be taken seriously? Mu Yaja's eyes turned even colder. Ha ha, Judge Lin, you're really good at disciplining him. Having said that, he carried Yu and stood up. He didn't want to waste his breath on these people. He was furious. He wanted to go back and teach the Lin family a lesson. Otherwise, who did they think his son was? That any Tom, Dick, or Harry could come and bully him? Ha ha. Chapter 15, 91. Wang Guimiao was flustered and exasperated. Her eyes were red, but Lin Ongwa's expression was too flustered to the point that she did not dare to say anything. She vaguely realized that perhaps it was because this man's identity was too powerful that her husband was so careful to plead for leniency. I think it's fine, Mu Yaja said as his gaze fell on Lin Ongwa's arm. Get out of my way. Chairman Mu. Lin Ongwa insisted. Mu Yaja's gaze turned even colder as he gave him a sidelong glance. Lin Ongwa did not dare to be in a stalemate any longer. He could only step aside resentfully and watch him leave with regret. When Mu Yaja left, the office was in an uproar. Wang Guimiao was wiping her tears as she scolded Lin Ongwa. Lin Ongwa was upset. When he heard Wang Guimiao's nagging, he became even more irritated and scolded, Shut up! Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Haven't you caused enough trouble? Wang Guimiao, you'll only be satisfied when you see me die, right? Wang Guimiao widened her eyes in shock. What do you mean by that? Lin Ongwa was so angry that he could not speak. She went up to him, crying as she questioned, What's going on? Who is he? Why are you giving in to him and being so respectful to him? To the extent that you want me to kneel down and apologize. Explain yourself. Lin Ongwa sat aside, angrily, but he was also upset. When he thought of Mu Yaja's deep and sullen gaze before he left, his heart raced, and he could not sit still. Wang Guimiao, I think you're going to play me to death. Wang Guimiao was so anxious that her face turned red. The principal came up to him and asked, Mr. Lin, this, Yu Yu's father, who is he? You seem to know him. Lin Ongwa sneered, but it was more like he was mocking himself. If I could know such a person, everything would be easier. What a pity. I know him, but He doesn't know a nobody like me. This teacher Yuan was flabbergasted too. Lin Angwa suddenly said in a low voice, "Do you know that this is Mu Yaja, the Mu Group's CEO? I've offended him this time. I don't know what he's going to do to me." Mu. Ah. The principal was stunned when he heard that. Mu Group. Isn't the capital's Mu? Oh, God. A name that reverberated like thunder in the ears. Impossible, right? Isn't Yun Tianyo's surname Yun? How does his father have anything to do with the Mu Group? The principal mumbled in confusion. How? When I saw him, his names, that's why I thought of it. Lin Angwa was also extremely regretful. What? Wang Gimie was stunned. Mu Group. Mu was too. To Mu. The Mu was of the aristocrats. There Angwa Mu's there. Yue Nouveau Riche might be able to become one overnight. The aristocrats, on the other hand, only appeared once every 300 years. The Mu family was such an aristocratic family. It was a century-old family with deep roots. Chapter 1592. On the other hand, a family like the Mu family was something that they could never hope to catch up to. Wang Guimiao was completely terrified. Even though she was ignorant and inexperienced, she knew that she should never offend the Mu family in the capital. That was a century-old, wealthy family with immense power. Mu Yaja carried Jiyu to his class and packed his bag. He was supposed to attend the parent-teacher meeting in the afternoon, but he was not going to attend it. He decided to transfer his son to Xiao Yichen's school. It was recess time, and it was almost lunchtime, so the class was very noisy. However, when Mu Yaja stepped into the classroom, the huge classroom instantly quieted down. The group of little ones stared at him, and countless pairs of eyes stared at him. Some looked curiously, while others looked anxiously at him. They thought that he was a high-ranking official from the school who had come to inspect the class. Recently, the Ministry of Education had been conducting random inspections of the school's standards. Therefore, high-ranking officials from the Ministry of Education often came in and out. However, when Mu Yaja sat in Yuyu's seat and started to pack his bag, the group of children suddenly realized that this was Yuyu's father. Oh my God, he's so tall and handsome. He's even better looking than the celebrities on TV. However, it was Mu Yaja's first time in school, and it was also his first time walking into a class of little ones. It was his first time appearing in school as a parent. He started to pack his bag, but when he sat in front of the low desk, his face immediately darkened. His figure was tall and slender, and when he sat in front of the low desk, the sense of disparity and abruptness was immediately reflected. He moved around in embarrassment trying to find a suitable angle, but it was in vain. In the end, he found that the bench here was too small, so he was trapped in such a narrow space, and it was difficult for him to make ends meet. On the other hand, Yuyu enjoyed the process very much. He stood beside Mu Yaja and unceremoniously enjoyed the countless envious and surprised gazes. He accepted all of those stunned gazes and did not reject any of them. Many children were envious of Yuyu for having such a young and handsome father. They were children after all. Although they were childish, there were all kinds of comparisons between them. At most, they would compare their parents. They would compare whose mother was younger and prettier, whose father was more handsome, whose family was wealthier. It was more or less these. Mu Yaja glanced at Yuyu. At that moment, the little one had his hands behind his back. Mu Yaja was full of smiles. He was very happy and proud of himself. If it was in the past, he would have been envious. He would have enviously looked at other students' fathers. Now, he had become the object of envy. He was in a good mood. Mu Yaja pursed his lips and could not help laughing. He was after all a 7-year-old child. Although some of his thoughts were childish, They were extremely cute. When Muyaja was packing his bag, some students quietly surrounded him and asked about his well-being. Classmate, is this handsome uncle your father? Yes. Classmate, wow. I'm so envious of you. Your father is so handsome. Of course. If my father isn't handsome, why would he give birth to me? So cute. Classmate A cupped his face and looked infatuated. Muyaja. Chapter 15, 93. Classmate B said, your daddy looks so young. He looks like a celebrity on TV. Can I take a picture with your daddy? Yu replied, sure. All the little kids exclaimed, wow, that's awesome. Me too. Count me in. As Yu was feeling smug, he walked over to Muyaja and whispered into his ear, Daddy, cooperate with me. Muyaja's lips twitched slightly. At this moment, he even wanted to hug Yu tightly. He was afraid that he would float into the sky in the next second. However, looking at the little kid's smug expression, Muyaja felt a tinge of sweetness in his heart. His son was proud of him. This made him happy. It turned out that it was such a wonderful feeling to be proud of a son. As he thought of this, Muyaja's mood improved. He raised his eyebrows and asked, how do you want me to cooperate? You just have to sit there and don't move. Hence, Muyaja was like a model. He maintained his upright posture. Next, he was surrounded by the little kids, and they jostled and jostled for a few group photos. He didn't like to be photographed. Even the reporters with the best methods didn't have the chance to take a picture of him from the front. Now, these little kids were taking advantage of Yu's relationship with him. There were also a number of infatuated little girls who were anxious to take a picture with him and secretly touched his slender hand. Muyaja didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Classmate C said, your daddy is so beautiful. Why don't I exchange places with you? I'll give you my daddy, and you give me your daddy. When Yu heard this, his expression became serious and cold. No. Why not? I don't want your daddy. I only have one daddy. As she spoke, Yu leaned against Muyaja's side and held onto his arm. It was as if she was declaring her sovereignty and protecting her unquestionable position. Everyone sighed in disappointment. Muyaja looked at little Munchkin, who was about to fly into the sky. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he covered his face. However, his eyes were filled with love. Even though she felt that Yu's smug look was hilarious, she also felt that he was extremely cute. As Muyaja helped him pack his bag, he stopped to flip through Yu's textbook. However, when he flipped open Yu's history class notes, he saw the delicate and beautiful handwriting in the book. The entire book was neat and tidy, other than the signs of pages being folded. It looked like a new book that had just been handed out. He could tell that Yu was more serious in class. He thought about how he had flipped through Xiao Yichen's textbook in the past. Even though they were brothers, in terms of academics, the difference between the two of them was like heaven and earth. After packing his bag, the group of little kids saw Muyaja carrying Yu and looking like he was about to leave. They all surrounded him and asked, Yu, school hasn't ended yet. Are you leaving already? Yu, where are you going? Yu said, I have something to do. I have to go home. You guys focus in class. He only said that perfunctorily and didn't tell them that he was going to transfer schools. Firstly, it was because he had a headache dealing with these little kids. If they knew that he was going to transfer schools, they would definitely pester him nonstop and not let him go. One couldn't underestimate his charm. Chapter 15, 94. It had only been a month since school started, but the children in his class liked him very much. If they knew that he was going to transfer schools, they would definitely cry their hearts out. It was easy for children to become emotionally dependent. All right, Everyone was reluctant to see him leave. Goodbye, Yu-Yu. Goodbye, Yu-Yu, Daddy. The children walked Yu-Yu and Muyaja to the entrance of the classroom and watched them leave. Muyaja carried Yu-Yu. When he turned around and saw the scene of them sending him off, he could not help but smack his sons, but, "Son, you're really popular in class." Yu-Yu snickered. "Daddy is very popular too. The little guys in the class all like you very much." "Little guys?" Muyaja was amused by his son's adjective. "Baby, you're the same age as them. You call them little guys, as if you're an old man." When Yu-Yu heard this, he suddenly hugged his son's neck and kissed him on the cheek. "Daddy, it's great that you're here today." Muyaja was stunned. Then he smiled and asked, "What do you mean?" "I'm very happy today, because your appearance proves that I'm just like them. I have a daddy who loves and dotes on me." Yu-Yu's little bit of self-esteem was greatly satisfied. Actually, his self-esteem was different from the children's. In the past, he really envied those children. They had a daddy, a mommy, and a happy family of 3. Today, his daddy was like a god who had descended from the sky and appeared by his side. Yu gently rested his head on his shoulder. His pink lips curved slightly as he snickered. "To be honest, I've been dreaming of this day for as long as I can remember." In the past, he had imagined that when he was in school, his daddy would suddenly appear at the classroom window like the other children's fathers. He would look at him gently and lovingly. He had been waiting for this moment for a very, very long time. Muyaja carried him. Although he had a heavy backpack on his arm, he did not find it strenuous at all. While she was gratified to hear the boy's confession, she also tasted a tinge of heartache. As lucky as he was, meeting Yun Shirshir was the luckiest thing that had ever happened to him. Because of her, he had a pair of obedient sons. After he carried Yu into the car, Muyaja drove back to the office of the office. Headmaster Dong smiled politely. "Hey, Chairman Mu, what are you saying? This is what I should do." "Ha ha. Daddy, your office is so big." "Is it?" Chapter 1595. Yu nodded and gave a more pertinent comment. "Yes, it's a little bigger than my office." Muyaja was speechless. This little guy. He did not bother to hide the arrogance and insolence in his words. He had really surpassed his father. His son, while he was still studying business, was already managing a company. "But I don't like business. I always feel that it looks a little lifeless. In comparison, I prefer things with a technological feel." As he spoke, he was suddenly attracted by a pile of documents on the desk. He could not help but reach out to take them. Muyaja, on the other hand, seemed to be deliberately going against him, as he quickly stopped the boy's hand from reaching out to grab it. Facing Yu's puzzled gaze, Muyaja blinked lightly and said mysteriously, "Baby, these are the financial group's trade secrets." With that, he narrowed his eyes and pretended to be wary as he sized him up. Yu's eyes twitched violently. "Daddy, you're wary of me." "Do you think I'm wary of you? You broke through Dishing Financial Group's defense network so easily. I can't guard against you even if I wanted to." "Of course." You snorted proudly. "That's why I can't let you see these trade secrets." Yu's smile froze. Then he huffed and crossed his arms. "Humph, Daddy, you're so petty. I'm just taking a look. I won't do anything. Can you understand them?" "Of course. Perhaps I can give you some original suggestions." "That good?" Muyaja teased him. "Of course. Then you show me how to read these documents." You made an okay gesture and took the documents. He sat on the desk, placed the documents on his lap, and flipped through them page by page. He was small, and Muyaja's desk was wide, long, and huge. Hence, when he sat cross-legged on the desk, he looked even smaller and skinnier. His chin gradually became sharper. In the past, it was still a little pink, but now it had a handsome face. Muyaja gazed at his side profile. Yu quietly lowered his head and flipped through the documents. Perhaps it was because of the high temperature in the office. He loosened his tie casually. His casual action was gentlemanly and charming. When he grew up, the number of fans that would follow him would probably line up from Beijing to Paris. While Yu was reading the documents for him, he thought for a while and called Lu Jinyu. Lu Jinyu was a mysterious subordinate of his. According to seniority, the man addressed him as Big Boss, while Muyaja addressed him as Fourth Boss. Lu Jinyu looked like a gentle and refined man, but he was the most cunning one among his subordinates. The call went through quickly. Before Muyaja could say anything, Lu Jinyu smiled and said, "Boss, what orders do you have for me this time?" Lu Jinyu was used to going straight to the point. This was because he knew that time and efficiency were Muyaja's pursuit. He never liked to bluff. Muyaja ordered, "Jinyu, find out about Lin Angua from the Legal Affairs Hall. Check his background." "Haha, boss, did this Lin Angua offend you?" Chapter 1596. Lu Jinyu laughed sinisterly. The Hall of Political Affairs is an organization set up by the government. Naturally, the people inside are not simple. But boss, you should know that not many of the people in the Hall of Political Affairs are clean. If you want to find out the background of this person, I might be able to find a lot of interesting things for you. This Lin Angua is a bluff. He's very arrogant. If it were in the past, I wouldn't be willing to stoop to the level of a small fry like him. But today, he's made me a little unhappy. At the end of his sentence, Muyaja's voice suddenly deepened, and he gave a certain hint. On the other hand, Lu Jinyu received his hint and immediately said, "Boss, don't worry. The thing you want, I'll get it for you by tomorrow at the latest. When the time comes, you can do whatever you want with him." "Okay, let me know as soon as possible." Lu Jinyu agreed. After the call ended, Muyaja stood up and walked to Yu's side. The little munchkin was focused on flipping through the case. He glanced through 10 lines at a time and circled some data from time to time. He smiled satisfactorily and gently rubbed his little head. Walking to one side, he picked up an apple and sat on the sofa to peel it for him. After peeling the apple, he carefully cut it into small slices and skewered them with toothpicks before bringing them to the little munchkin's hand. His cell phone suddenly rang. Muyaja picked up his cell phone and glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number. After answering the call, an unfamiliar man's cautious voice came from the other end. "Hello, may I know if you're Chairman Mu from Dishing Financial Group?" Muyaja smiled slightly. Although the other party did not state his identity, he immediately guessed who this person was. "As the head of the city hall, you're indeed very capable. But don't you think it's inappropriate to use your power to investigate my personal number?" Jiang Hongwei was shocked. He thought to himself that this Muyaja was indeed not simple. He had already guessed who he was before he had even revealed his identity. At the same time, he felt guilty. In a moment of desperation, he had indeed used his power to investigate Muyaja's personal number through the internal network. However, Jiang Hongwei had been in the government for many years. He was also an old fox. He avoided the important points and dwell on the trivial points. He quickly avoided this topic. "Ha, Chairman Mu, it's like this. Just now I got the news. I heard that your men are collecting information about Lin Angua. I'd like to ask what's going on. Did he offend you?" Jiang Hongwei was over 50 years old. To be able to sit in such a position as the city hall director, he was definitely not an ordinary person. Even if there was a slight disturbance, he would be extremely alert and alert. As soon as he gave the order, and Lu Jinyu did something, the news reached Jiang Hongwei's ears. People like them had always been very sensitive to this kind of thing. They had called in a hurry just to sound out the situation. Mu Yaja couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. He lazily asked, "What do you think?" His words had a deep meaning, but it made Jiang Hongwei even more worried. "Chairman Mu, tell me, how did Lin Angua offend you?" "Offend you?" Mu Yaja laughed mockingly. "I'm afraid it's not appropriate for you to ask me this question." Chapter 1597. Mu Yaja said slowly, "The people in the city hall are all so capable. Director Jiang, if you don't control your subordinates, you won't be able to protect yourself if something fishy happens to them." These words made Jiang Hongwei extremely anxious. For someone as experienced as him, he could naturally sense that something was amiss with just a few words. It seemed that Lin Angua had offended the person he shouldn't have offended the most. However, he had already expected this to happen. His phone call was just to sound out Lin Angua. Naturally, he didn't care about Lin Angua. Still, after working together for so many years, some interests were intertwined. Jiang Hongwei was worried that Lin Angua would be foolish enough to provoke Mu Yaja into a fit of rage. If that were to happen, the whole city hall would be wiped out in one fell swoop. It wasn't easy for him to climb to his current position. He had worked hard for more than 20 years and settled down in the political arena where there was a knife hidden behind a smile for many years to achieve the glory he had today. He couldn't just let someone drag him down and take him down from his position. For people like them, benefits were intertwined. Hence, when necessary, he had to cast aside all his relationships to prevent himself from falling into the water. That would not be worth the loss. "Chairman Mu, it seems that Lin Angua must have caused you trouble. I didn't mean anything else by making this call. I just wanted to ask, how are you going to deal with him? By the way, Chairman Mu, I hope that you won't implicate the innocent because of Lin Angua." As he said this, Jiang Hongwei laughed awkwardly. Mu Yaja chuckled along, too, but he quickly stopped laughing. His voice deepened, but it was filled with an irresistible authority. "Implicating the innocent? Ha ha! Let's see how you stand on this matter, Director Jiang. Anyway, this Lin Angua isn't reliable. He uses his status to do whatever he wants. If you keep such a subordinate by your side, he will only harm you. As for how I'm going to deal with him, you don't have to ask. If you know what's good for you, you probably know what to do next." Jiang Hongwei was silent for a while on the other end of the phone. He suddenly understood and said with a smile, "Chairman Mu, don't worry. I understand what you mean. Next, I'll do what you want me to do." After saying this, he thanked him profusely and hung up the phone. Less than 15 minutes later, Lu Jinyu called to say that an anonymous email had been sent to his mailbox. The email contained some evidence against Lin Angua. How could a person like Lin Angua not have any stains on him? For the time being, let's not talk about his corruption and bribery, just the fact that he had embezzled a few bad assets through his connections with the government and business, and through his friends, he reinvested and rebuilt them. Moreover, the stolen money amounted to more than $1 billion, which was enough to send him to prison for the rest of his life. There was no need to think too much of him. Jiang Hongwei wasn't stupid. He was a shrewd person. Seeing Lin Angua's decline, he couldn't just sit by and watch. He also couldn't let himself be dragged down by him. Lin Angua was a very capable person. As his chess piece, he had also obtained many benefits for him. However, a chess piece was a chess piece after all. He had no value to be used, so he should be abandoned. Chapter 1598. He was a sly old fox. Since he was working with Lin Angua, he naturally had a backup plan. Mu Yaja said, "Since someone has sent you these documents, You should know what to do next. On the other end of the line, Lu Jinyu laughed inwardly. Jiang Hongwei is indeed a sly old fox. He's really good at adding insult to injury. This kind of person is not easy to control. Fortunately, I still have some evidence of his crimes in my hands. Mu Yaja hummed an acknowledgement before changing the topic. You can handle this matter. I'm at ease with you handling it. What are you talking about, boss? When have I ever made a mistake? Just wait for my news. With that, he hung up the phone. Mu Yaja got up and walked to Yu Yu. He saw that the stack of cases beside him had already been dealt with. He picked them up and glanced at them. When his gaze fell on the comments at the end, he raised his eyebrows in surprise. Yu was fully focused on reviewing the last document. When he looked up, he saw Mu Yaja's shocked expression. He was puzzled. Daddy, what's wrong? Mu Yaja was still in a daze. He had thought that Yu was just being perfunctory when he said that he was going to review the documents for him. He did not expect that this guy would actually read through the documents seriously. He even drew out all the illogical parts of the documents and gave his own explanations. It was clear at a glance. Daddy, there's a problem with the financial affairs of the organization. You said meaningfully. Mu Yaja sneered. There's something fishy about the financial affairs. It's nothing more than those sly old foxes from the Mu family stirring up trouble right under my nose to get a bigger share of the pie. However, they're timid and don't dare to do anything big. They're so naive to think that I can't see through them. Yu clicked his tongue twice and sighed. No matter how high a mountain is, it's still made of rocks. Even if it's a small problem, once it gets worse, it'll be very serious. I know what to do. After saying that, Mu Yaja looked at him with gratification and couldn't help but scratch the bridge of his nose dotingly. Your shrewdness is just like your father's. Humph, using me to boast. Daddy doesn't know how to be ashamed. Yu stuck her tongue out mischievously. Then she hooked her arms around his shoulders and snuggled into his embrace. Daddy, I miss Mommy. I miss her so much. I feel like I haven't seen her for hundreds of years. As he spoke, his little face collapsed in grievance, but his eyes were filled with sadness. Mu Yaja's face darkened slightly. For the past few days, Yun Shirshir had not sent any messages. As for Yu, the most recent time they had been in contact was during a video call last weekend. In the video call, Yun Shirshir was dressed in an ancient costume. She didn't even have time to remove her exquisite makeup. Her clothes were scattered, and she wore a golden hairpin with tassels on her head. She couldn't hide her fatigue. When she had the video call with him, she had been secretly hiding in the changing room during a break in filming. She had purposely lowered her voice when she spoke. After that, other than a few messages, they had lost contact. You could only pitifully find out about Yun Shirshir's updates from the production team's official Weibo account. He missed her dearly. For the past few days, Xiao Yichen wasn't as active as before. Sometimes he would sit quietly on the sofa and browse the official Weibo account of the production team of Lethal Beauty. Chapter 1599. Yu said, "It's Mommy's birthday next Monday. I've always been the one to celebrate Mommy's birthday in the past." As he spoke, he was reminded of Yun Shirshir's busy schedule. After a pause, he said resentfully, "But Mommy is on set this year. Daddy, can't you think of a way?" Upon hearing this, Mu Yaja fell silent. At night, an uninvited guest appeared outside Shangdi Walk. It turned out that Lin Angua, who had caught wind of the news, had brought his wife and son to Yu's doorstep to beg for Mu Yaja's forgiveness. Lu Jinyu acted quickly, and Lin Angua was well informed. When he heard the news that night, he felt uneasy. Hence, he personally brought his wife to apologize to them. Otherwise, his life would be ruined. Mu Yaja was in the study. Hence, you put on a coat and walked out of the door. He saw Linangwa and Wang Guimiao standing outside, looking uneasy and frightened. When they saw him, they looked as if they had seen their savior. Both of them went up to him and pleaded with him through the luxurious iron door. Is Chairman Mu home? Let me see Chairman Mu, will you? All right. Uncle is begging you. At this moment, Linangwa was no longer as arrogant and overbearing as before. His worried face was full of helplessness. Beside him, Wang Guimiao looked even worse. She was bloated and looked gloomy. Her eyes were red and swollen, as if she had been crying miserably. At this moment, she was no longer wearing the exquisite makeup she had been wearing in the afternoon. Her face was gloomy and gloomy. After leaving school today, Linangwa had given Wang Guimiao and Lin Feng a good scolding, but he still could not vent his anger. Wang Guimiao felt wronged and indignant. However, she was stubborn, so she retorted stubbornly. In a fit of anger, Linangwa looked at her sternly and slapped her in front of everyone in the office. Wang Guimiao and Lin Feng were stupefied. After being married for so many years, the couple had always been very harmonious. The reason why Linangwa could be where he was today was because of the support of the Wang family. Therefore, even if there were many things about Wang Guimiao that made him unhappy, he still tolerated them. Today was the first time he had hit her. Wang Guimiao couldn't believe it. Filled with anger and grievance, she burst into tears in front of so many people. However, Linangwa didn't comfort her like before. Looking at her, he felt even more embarrassed. He had long lost his patience with her. Wang Guimiao did not study much. Not only was she uncultured, but she also had a low EQ, which caused him a lot of trouble. He had repeatedly warned her that there would always be someone better than her. When she was outside, she should not be too arrogant and domineering. Instead, she should keep a low profile. Given his position, he had to be careful in everything he did. The slightest carelessness could lead to a bottomless abyss. There was nothing wrong with keeping a low profile. How many people had died because of their high-profile style? However, Wang Guimiao did not understand this logic. Today, she had caused a huge disaster for him. Thus, even when she cried, he couldn't be bothered to comfort her. He was still worried about it. His heart was in a mess. He didn't know what to do at the moment. Wang Guimiao was crying beside him, which made him even more upset. The couple had a big fight because of this. Chapter 1600. In his anger, Linangwa yelled at her, Wang Guimiao, Wang Guimiao, do you know who you've offended today? Do you know? The person I've offended today can kill me with just one finger. Perhaps with just one word from him, my great future will be ruined. She shouted disapprovingly. What are you afraid of? Don't you still have my family? Why are you so agitated? She was so self-righteous that it was impossible to reason with her. Linangwa was so angry that he laughed. His face was ferocious, and he had never lost control like this before. Ha ha, Wang Guimiao, I told you that you're a frog in a well, but you don't believe me. How powerful do you think your Wang family is? It's just tens of millions in assets. In other people's eyes, the Wang family is just a nouveau riche. Do you understand nouveau riche? Do you think you have the ability to go against the Mu family? It can't be that serious, right? What do you mean it can't be that serious? Don't you know how much the Mu Group has? Hundreds of billions in assets. What kind of concept is that? There are many interests behind them. Even if they don't cover the sky with one hand, there's still a first-class family in the capital. Do you know what it means to offend the Mu family? They have connections in both the underworld and the government. With their background, who cares who you are? It's just a matter of opening and closing their mouths. I think you're muddle-headed. You still haven't recognized this point. I'll F*** King. Linangwa was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He pointed at her and said word by word, "My F*** brilliant life will be ruined by your hands sooner or later." "No." He paused and said sternly, "The Lin family and the Wang family will both be ruined by your hands." These words were said in anger to scare her. However, he didn't expect that his words would come true. Linangwa didn't expect Muyaja to make a move so quickly. The storm came suddenly and violently. After he heard the news, his mind went blank for a moment. According to the insider, Muyaja's side had already obtained some evidence of his crimes. The next step was to hand this evidence over to the Commission for Discipline Inspection. What was left was probably the end of his world. Over the years, Linangwa had done a lot of things. His black income should be more than $1 billion, and this was not a small amount. $1 billion was more than enough to sentence him to death, let alone prison. He was so scared that his heart palpitated on the spot. Wang Guimiao was so scared that she gave him 2 quick-acting heart-relieving pills before he recovered. Logically speaking, given how careful he was with his actions, it was unlikely that he would leave behind any incriminating evidence. Therefore, he was also skeptical about it. However, when he dialed Jiang Hongwei's number, Jiang Hongwei only vaguely reminded him, "Angwa, now that something like this has happened, you can only pray for yourself." After saying that, he hung up the phone. Linangwa was suddenly frightened. When he called again, he could not get through. Since Jiang Hongwei had already said so, he immediately felt disheartened. He went limp and fell to the ground, unable to come back to his senses for a long time. His first reaction was to run, take the money and escape abroad. The further the better. However, when he thought about it carefully, even if he wanted to escape, where could he escape to? Muyaja must have had a backup plan. If he wanted to escape, it would be difficult for him to do so. He was determined to toy with him until he died. This man was rumored to be ruthless, but he had seen it with his own eyes. He was indeed ruthless. He didn't leave him any way out. Chapter 16:01. He was in so much pain at the thought of his many years of hard work being destroyed in one day. He made a lot of phone calls, but he realized that he had accumulated so many connections overnight, but now none of them had heard of him. At times like this, he had to be careful of which side he chose. If he was not careful, he would be implicated. No one was willing to help him, lest they get into trouble. He thought for a while, and finally decided to bring Wang Guimiao to apologize to him personally. Perhaps he would be lucky enough to get his forgiveness. Thus, the scene before him was born. Yu stood expressionlessly at the door. He looked at the pleading couple without a trace of emotion in his eyes. How pitiful! Yu said this coldly with an indifferent expression. Linangwa saw his expression and was shocked by the little guy's calm state of mind. Usually, children of this age would run to their parents in fright upon seeing such a scene. However, at this moment, he stood at the door with his arms crossed and a cold expression on his face. Wang Guimiao looked at him with an ugly expression and felt extremely remorseful. She could not figure it out and found it strange. She had known about Yun Tianyu since he was in kindergarten, but she had only heard that he had a mother. She had never heard of him having a father. In the parents' group, it was said that the child was from a single-parent family and could not even be considered a single-parent family. His mother was still unmarried, so no one could say for sure how the child came about. It was said that he was an illegitimate child. His mother gave birth to him at the age of 18, which was an unmarried pregnancy. Many people looked down on her and despised her from the bottom of their hearts. Wang Guimiao looked down on her even more. Without an indomitable man in the family, it was indeed easy for people to gossip. A single mother would be subjected to a lot of malicious speculation and slander. Today, however, this child had a father out of nowhere. Moreover, this man's status was not low and was incomparably noble. He was actually one of the top figures in the Move family. Even now, she still felt that she was in a dream. Who asked her to be unlucky, though? The only thing to blame was that she should not have gone overboard. Lin Ongwa went up to him and begged again, "Little master, can you please invite your father out? I have something to ask of you." "What is it? Can't you tell me?" You said casually. Lin Ongwa was embarrassed for a moment, but he knew that this child was obviously making things difficult for him. Thus, his face turned red. He clenched his teeth and actually knelt on the ground with a plop. It was late at night, and the ground was cold. He knelt down, almost without hesitation. Yu was not surprised to see him kneel down. At the same time, she looked at Lin Ongwa meaningfully and smiled. "Mr. Lin, why are you doing this? What are you trying to do?" "Little Lord, I'm here to apologize to you and your father." As Lin Ongwa spoke, he fiercely pulled Wang Guimiao. Wang Guimiao was caught off guard and fell to her knees as well. A sharp pain came from his knee. However, she couldn't care about anything else. In any case, he had already lost all his face, and there was nothing he could do to regain it. Chapter 1602. Even though she did not believe it, Wang Guimiao knew that Lin Ongwa was in a panic. Lin Ongwa said that the Mu family had secretly obtained some evidence of his crimes. If they didn't take any action and beg the Mu family to be merciful, the only thing that awaited the Lin family and the Wang family would be death. Wang Guimiao knew a little about Lin Ongwa's actions in the past few years. She knew that if the evidence of his crimes was in the hands of others, it would be as good as having his life in the hands of others. Hence, she did not care about her pride anymore. She knelt down and kowtowed as hard as she could under Lin Ongwa's gaze. You, Annie was wrong. Auntie was really wrong. Annie shouldn't have called you a little b*** starred. Annie shouldn't have listened to those rumors and humiliated you and your mother. Auntie knows her mistake. Can you forgive me?" Then she kowtowed as hard as she could. She was really kowtowing. She knocked her forehead on the ground so hard that her skin was bruised. However, she did it on purpose. She wanted to put on an act for him to see. A little bruise was nothing if she could beg the Mu family to be merciful. So what if she got bruised and bled a little? Yu yawned and said lazily, Okay, I know, I forgive you." Lin Ongwa was overjoyed when he heard that. "Really?" Wang Guimiao was surprised. She looked up with her eyes wide open and smiled through her tears. She was in a sorry state, and her hair was disheveled. She looked disgusting. You did not want to look at her. Why should I be so calculative with an uncultured person? So now, all of you can disappear from my sight." Then Lin Ongwa and Wang Guimiao looked at each other in surprise. They did not expect that it would be so easy to get forgiveness. They had to admit that children were easy to trick. Just a little bit of self-injury, and she would be soft-hearted. Lin Ongwa rubbed his hands and chuckled. He asked tentatively, "Then that tainted evidence. What evidence?" Yu raised her eyebrows in confusion. "It's like this. Chairman Mu, can you plead for me? Ask him to be merciful and let me off. Don't hand over those things to the commission for discipline inspection." Yu was confused. "I don't know what you're talking about. It's so cold outside. I'm going home." "Wait." Like a drowning man, Lin Ongwa called out to him hoarsely and asked, Didn't you forgive your uncle?" "Yes, that's right." Then can you ask your father to let me go? This doesn't seem to work." Yu's lips curled into a sinister smile. "My daddy hates you." Lin Ongwa froze. Beside him, Wang Guimiao's joy turned to sorrow. The smile on her face froze in an instant, and despair appeared in her eyes. You said slowly, "No one can change my daddy's decision." "I'm sorry, Uncle Lin." After that, he smiled elegantly like a little gentleman and turned to go back to the villa. The door slammed shut, completely isolating Lin Angua and Wang Guimiao from begging for mercy. That night, it rained heavily. Lin Angua and Wang Guimiao did not dare to leave. They insisted on kneeling at the door for the whole night. Yu ignored them. Chapter 16:03. When the sun was about to rise, Yu got out of bed and opened the curtains, only to find the two still kneeling by the door. Wang Guimiao was in a daze and on the verge of collapsing as she leaned on Lin Angua. After kneeling in the rain for an entire night, the two of them fainted on the ground. Not long after, they were carried away by the ambulance. Lu Jinyu was also very efficient. After sorting out the documents, he submitted the evidence of Lin Angua's crimes to the disciplinary committee. Soon, the documents were issued. Lin Angua was taken away for investigation. After the investigation, Lin Angua was accused of corruption, embezzlement, collusion with illegal businesses, embezzlement of non-performing assets, and embezzlement of more than 1 billion yuan. This case caused a huge uproar. Even the Wangs were implicated, and their family assets were destroyed. Of course, this was all in the future. Before the admission procedures were completed, it happened to be Friday. Yu asked Li Hanlin to drive him to the supermarket to buy some baking ingredients. He planned to bake a birthday cake for Yun Shishir when he got home. He was the one who had made the cake last year. However, at that time, he had just started baking and was not very familiar with it. Hence, the cake did not taste good. However, Yun Shishir liked it very much. This time, Yu secretly decided that he must bake a super delicious cake for Mommy's birthday. He would send it to Mommy when he visited her at work. When he got home, Yu rushed into the kitchen and skillfully separated the egg yolk from the egg white. He then mixed the egg white evenly with the egg whisk. He was already extremely familiar with this series of processes. In the past, he would often bake some small cakes as a snack. He used a mold to create a heart-shaped cake embryo and placed it in the oven. Then he started to think about what kind of cake he should make. After much consideration, he decided to draw a cartoon version of the family portrait on the cake. When Muyaja got home, he heard some noises coming from the kitchen. He walked in quietly and saw Yu with his head lowered. He was so focused that he did not notice Muyaja's presence behind him. He was making a fondant cake. At this moment, the cartoon version of the character was more than half done. Yu was very focused. Under the warm light, his handsome eyebrows and youthful side profile looked gentle and charming. From the side, his long and thick eyelashes were slightly lowered. His gaze was as gentle as water, and his lips were slightly curved, as if he was smiling. Muyaja looked at his hands. It turned out that he was making a cartoon version of Yun Shishir. He held the fondant sculpture in his hands gently and carefully, as if he was holding her in his hands. His and little Ichen's figurines were already made on the cake. After he was done with Yun Shishir, he began to work on Muyaja's character. Muyaja's interest was piqued. He was curious as to how he would look in this little guy's hands. Yu first made a round face for him, then a round body. Then he picked up a pen and dipped it in the icing. As if he was playing a prank, Yu deliberately drew a fierce face for Muyaja. When Muyaja saw this, he frowned slightly and said, unhappily, "Why did you draw me so fierce?" "Wah!" Yu was startled by the sudden sound behind him. His hand trembled, and the pen drew a distorted line on the doll's face. Thus, Muyaja's mouth became crooked. Muyaja was speechless. Chapter 16:04. He looked at the sugar figurine with a crooked mouth and turned around, feeling wronged. He said angrily, "Daddy, why did you stand behind me without saying a word? It's very scary, okay? I didn't do it on purpose. Who knows how timid you are?" Muyasha said innocently, "Look at the birthday cake you made. The three of you look so cute, but you made me look fierce. I object." Objection overruled. Yu held up the sugar figurine in his hand and looked left and right. He compared it to the real person and suddenly expressed his opinion. "It's very similar. Muyasha, it's your fault for always pulling a long face." Yu then looked at the crooked mouth of the sugar figurine and laughed. "Daddy, you're so pitiful. Your mouth is crooked. It's all your fault." Muyasha said, feeling wronged. Yu retorted, "It's your fault for not saying a word when you came in. You stood behind me and gave me a fright. Otherwise, I wouldn't have failed." Muyasha smiled and hugged him from behind. He rested his chin on little Munchkin's shoulder and looked at his frosted hand. He couldn't help but laugh. "Is this your birthday present for Mommy?" "Yes." You fixed the adorable Muyasha figure on the cake, and then remembered to finish it. He continued what he was doing and asked, "Daddy, does the cake look good?" Muyasha thought seriously for a while, and then commented, "It's not bad." "What do you mean by not bad?" You protested unwillingly. "I think it's great. Can I eat the sugar figurine on the cake? Other than Mommy and me, you can eat the rest. You said generously." Muyasha frowned, but pretended to be unhappy and teased him. "Why can I only eat mine and Xiao Chen's, but not yours and Mommy's?" "Hee. Because Mommy's are the cutest. No one is allowed to eat them." After completing the last step, Yu looked at the finished product and reveled in her exquisite craftsmanship. "What a beautiful cake. I made it myself. Mommy will definitely like it." After speaking, Yu turned around and hooked her arm around Muyasha's shoulder. "Daddy, when are we going to visit the set?" "When Xiao Chen is out of school, we'll visit the set. Long live." Yu was elated. "I can finally see my dearest Mommy. Last night, I missed her so much that I couldn't sleep. Mommy must have forgotten that today is her birthday. I must give her a birthday surprise from the sky." Muyasha scratched his nose affectionately. "Okay." When Xiao Chen came home from school at 3 o'clock, he saw Yu placing the finished cake in the kitchen. He went over and looked at it for a long time. He was so hungry that he almost drooled. He turned around and ran over to Yu, chirping happily like a little bird. "Yu, did you personally make that birthday cake for Mommy?" "Yes, I made it." Yu was very pleased with herself. Xiao Chen was very hungry. He pestered him and asked, "When are we going to visit her at the set?" Last night, the three of them had discussed that on her birthday, they must visit the set and give Yun Shir a birthday surprise. The two little lads were so excited about their birthday that they couldn't sleep well. Chapter 16:05. You snorted. "Mommy will definitely like my cake more." Xiao Chen whimpered and looked down pitifully. You're a bully. Are you saying that my present isn't nice?" "I can't help it. It's your fault for being so stupid. But you're so stupid, so you've already improved a lot." Xiao Chen wagged his tail again. "Really? I think so too. Hee. Then he pestered Muyasha and asked, "Daddy, what birthday present did you prepare for Mommy?" Muyasha smiled deeply and pressed his slender fingers against his lips, pretending to be mysterious. Xiao Chen shouted, "Stingy? Daddy is so stingy." Just as Yu had expected, Yun Shir had indeed forgotten that it was her birthday today. She was completely unaware of the upcoming birthday surprise. Early in the morning, she rushed to the set, changed into an ancient costume, put on makeup, and participated in the filming. The sun was shining brightly these few days, so there were many outdoor scenes. Yun Shirshir was inevitably nervous because it was her first time using a wire. On the set, director Gu and the martial arts master were nervously discussing the upcoming wire scene. Yun Shirshir changed into a pink silk dress. The next scene was her encounter with the male lead, Yun Chung, played by Hua Jin. In the plot, the prince's mansion was holding a birthday party. Qin Shuiyao, who was playing the role of Qin Shuiyao, climbed a tree to pick up a kite. She accidentally slipped and fell from the tree. The male lead appeared and saved her. When the two met, Qin Shuiyao fell in love with Yun Chung at first sight. There were two scenes today. One was between Yun Shirshir and Hua Jin, and the other was between Yun Shirshir and Lin Ji. Yun Shirshir changed into her costume and was familiarizing herself with the camera position. Positioning was very important when filming, so she had to familiarize herself with it in advance. In addition, she was worried that she would not perform well in the wire scene and was under a lot of pressure. Suddenly, there was a fierce commotion on the set. Yun Shirshir turned around and saw countless flashing lights. It turned out that Lin Ji had changed into her costume and appeared on the set. Today, there were many reporters visiting the set. However, as the media, the main visitors were naturally the female lead, Lin Ji, and the male lead, Hua Jin. The audience was looking forward to the collision and sparks between the number one young man in ancient costumes and the number one actress in ancient costumes. Therefore, as soon as Lin Ji appeared on the set, all the reporters were on the move. They aimed their cameras at her and flashed wildly. Many other actors and actresses were looking at Lin Ji enviously. As expected of Lin Ji, as the female lead, she has so many media reporters visiting her. How glorious! A female supporting character sighed, with envy. Humph! Who knew if these reporters were hired by her? Lin Ji hasn't been in the limelight recently. She's not even as popular as Yun Shirshir. These reporters might have been hired. Another supporting character cursed inwardly. Along the way, Lin Ji's appearance caused a stir on the set. She seemed to enjoy the sensation and smiled at the reporters from time to time. She seemed to have come prepared. She had on exquisite makeup and was posing and flirting under the flashing lights. All the reporters surrounded her excitedly and handed microphones to her from time to interview her. Lin Ji noticed that Yun Shirshir was also looking at her. The corners of her mouth curled up, and her eyes revealed a smug look as if she was silently showing off. Yun Shirshir frowned. This Lin Ji, Chapter 1606. Didn't she know that her pretentious appearance made her look like a clown? She turned around and continued reading her script. Gu Xiaoyang heard the commotion and turned around abruptly. He frowned when he saw Lin Ji surrounded by reporters. Director Gu had a strange temper. He was very particular about the rules of the set. During filming, he strictly forbade any form of visits, let alone a high-profile one like Lin Ji's. If the media were to enter the set during filming, it would be detrimental to the set. It wasn't that they weren't allowed to visit the set, but they were filming and were not allowed to do anything unrelated to the filming. "Old Zhang, where did these reporters come from?" Director Gu asked with a frown. The script editor shook his head. Director Gu slammed the table and said angrily, "Didn't I order time and time again to seal off the set during filming and not allow any media or fans to enter?" "Director Gu, I've already sent people to seal off the set." I don't know what's going on either." Director Gu threw down his script and walked up to Lin Ji. He waved his hand and said, "Now is not the time to visit the set. Get lost." Director Gu was known for his fiery temper. The reporters didn't dare to offend him, so they scrambled away with their equipment at his command. Lin Ji was left behind with an awkward expression. "Director Gu, I Gu Xiaoyang didn't wait for her to explain, and scolded, "Shut up! Lin Ji, didn't I warn you not to cause any trouble on set? You're acting in my film as the female lead. Do you think you're good at acting? Or do you think you're so good that you can be so lawless and arrogant on set? How dare you let the reporters in during filming? Don't you know that I hate it when outsiders come in during filming?" Director Gu didn't give Lin Ji any face in front of everyone. Lin Ji's face turned green and red. She was extremely embarrassed. "Director Gu, you've misunderstood me. I don't know how these reporters got in." "You don't know?" Director Gu sneered. "Don't you know best how they got in? Why are you acting dumb in front of me? Do you think I'm easy to fool? Are you a best actress or an A-lister? Why did those reporters only take pictures of you and not the others? Do I have to be more straightforward? Why did you disregard the interests of the crew and consider the feelings of others? Have you considered my thoughts?" Gu Xiaoyang mercilessly exposed her in front of everyone, making Lin Ji even more embarrassed. The supporting actress who had guessed that Lin Ji had hired a reporter to visit her on set sneered. "I knew it! Ha ha!" Lin Ji still wanted to explain. Gu Xiaoyang didn't want to listen to her excuses. "Look at your face. What the hell is that makeup on? Didn't I ask the makeup artist to do willowy eyebrows and cherry lips for you? Take a look at yourself and look in the mirror." Lin Ji hired a reporter to visit her at work. In order to look more photogenic, she especially asked the makeup artist to put on Korean-style makeup. Gu Xiaoyang scolded her harshly. Lin Ji felt too ashamed to show her face. "Director Gu," Lin Ji's eyes were misty with tears, and she was about to cry. She deliberately acted pitiful in order to gain Director Gu's understanding. Chapter 1607. "Lin Ji, I'm warning you for the last time. Don't play any more tricks. If you anger me, I don't care if you're the female lead or not. I'll cut you into a side character. Hee hee. I'll also give you a heads up while I'm at it. Anyway, the filming has just started, so it doesn't matter even if I kick you out of the cast. Don't blame me for falling out with you when the time comes." Anyway, the female lead in his heart was never this actress. If she were to play any tricks again, he did not mind kicking her out, and replacing Yun Shirshir with her was exactly what he wanted. Yun Shirshir was the Chinchangle in his heart. Not only did she look good, but her acting skills were also better than the actress's. Alas, the actress was one step ahead and snatched the role from him. Gu Xiaoyang was still sulking because of this matter. Lin Ji's financial backer had invested a lot in the movie, so Director Gu suppressed his anger. "Go wash my makeup and redo it," Gu Xiaoyang said, and left. Under the mocking and curious gazes of the crowd, the actress could only grit her teeth awkwardly and return to the dressing room unhappily to do her makeup. The director walked over to Yun Shirshir, who was seriously reading the script. He nodded in satisfaction when he saw that she was focused on it. Only then did he return to discuss the wire arrangement with the martial arts director. She happened to be delivering water to Yun Shirshir. When she saw this scene, she excitedly went up to her and said with a smile, "Shirshir, the director has been looking at you just now." "What?" "He stood beside you and looked at you for a long time. I think he saw that you were seriously reading the script and was very satisfied with your attitude. That's why he smiled in relief." Yun Shirshir smiled and said, "Mushi, I'm a little nervous. I heard that if I'm not careful with the wire, I'll fall down." "Oh, please. Do you think the martial arts director on set is just for decoration? Don't worry. It'll be very safe." Mushi comforted her. Hua Jin also finished his makeup and rushed to the set. Yun Shirshir looked up and saw him appear. She was stunned. His first reaction was that Hua Jin's title of the best young actor in ancient costumes was not undeserved. He was dressed in a crescent white robe and had an elegant demeanor. His handsome hair was draped over his shoulders, and his beautiful and exquisite facial features were embellished with makeup. His beauty was even more breathtaking. Her charm was so outstanding that it overshadowed the beauty of the female lead. Her every frown and smile was captivating. This was the first time she had acted with Hua Jin in a scene. Hence, it was also the first time she had seen Hua Jin in his ancient costume. It wasn't that she hadn't seen Hua Jin without makeup. His skin was very good. His facial features were very three-dimensional, and his eyebrows and eyes had the unique charm of an ancient handsome man. His charming eyes were like silk, the corners of his eyes were long and narrow, and when he looked back, his smile was enchanting. Yun Shirshir's mind wandered for a moment before she exclaimed in shock, "Gosh! Hua Jin's ancient costume shocked me." At the side, Mushi also came back to her senses. Shirshir, gosh! Hua Jin's ancient costume is so stunning. Even if it's the real person, it's better than many of the photos of young actors in ancient costumes. It's so beautiful. She could not suppress her voice, so everyone heard her praise and could not help but look over. Even Hua Jin could vaguely hear her excited voice. He looked in Yun Shirshir and Mushi's direction with a meaningful gaze. Yun Shirshir felt embarrassed. "Mushi, can you speak a little louder?" Chapter 16:08. Hua Jin suddenly walked toward Yun Shirshir. Yun Shirshir was stunned. She turned around and thought that Hua Jin was going behind her, but she realized that there was no one behind her. When she turned around, Hua Jin was already in front of her. He was not as tall as Mu Yaja, but he was still very tall at 1.8 meters. When he bent down to look at her up close, she could even see his flawless and perfect skin. It was as if it could be broken by the slightest breeze. What was even more stunning was his pair of deep eyes that seemed to be bewitching and could make people fall for him uncontrollably. She was already stunned when she saw Hua Jin walking over. Yun Shirshir came back to her senses and pursed her lips. She could not help but take a step back. Just as she took a step back, Hua Jin took a step forward. Yun Shirshir frowned and took 2 more steps back with displeasure in her eyes. Hua Jin, on the other hand, smiled and took 2 more steps forward. His strides were bigger than hers, so he could not wait to be right in front of her. Yun Shirshir could even feel his warm breath on her forehead. Her heart was beating like thunder. This man, what was he trying to do? He approached her silently, just like the first time backstage at the press conference. Yun Shirshir could not understand what he was trying to do. Hua Jin's good-looking lips curled up. He lowered his head to look at her and smiled. "Are you shy?" When he spoke, his voice was gentle and pleasant. His voice was not as rough as a man's, nor was it as deep and mellow as Mu Yaja's. Instead, it was as magnetic as a clear spring. Yun Shirshir could not help but ask, "What are you trying to do?" "Yun Shirshir." He called her name and smiled devilishly as he tilted his head slightly. "It's our first time acting together." "Yes." "So," Hua Jin dragged out the last word and suddenly blinked at her. "Don't you think we should cultivate some chemistry?" Mushi, who was standing at the side, finally reacted. Seeing this scene, her eyes twitched hard. No matter how one looked at this scene, why did it seem like Hua Jin was flirting with Shirshir? Could it be, was Hua Jin interested in her Shirshir? However, at this moment, Mushi was completely immersed in Hua Jin's beautiful side profile and had no time to care about anything else. Yun Shirshir laughed dryly. "Develop tacit understanding? I don't know what you're talking about, but can you not stick so close to me?" "Close?" Hua Jin didn't think so. "Is it close? Men and women don't know what they're doing. It's best if we keep our distance." However, Hua Jin felt that her answer was very cute. "This distance isn't considered close." He lowered his head slightly and whispered into her ear, "Little fool, between men and women, only negative distance is considered close." Negative distance. Yun Shirshir was confused and didn't even think of the evil side. Hua Jin felt that her reaction was very interesting. How could there be such an innocent woman in the entertainment industry? She was so silly that it was cute. Looking at his meaningful smile, Yun Shirshir realized what he meant by negative distance. She suddenly stretched out her hands and pushed him away. "Jerk! Do you think it's fun to tease me like this?" With that, Yun Shirshir glared at him fiercely and walked around him. Hua Jin pursed his lips and covered his mouth to hide his laughter. He was as mischievous as a lazy kitten that had secretly eaten meat. He relentlessly chased after her and followed behind her. A strand of his handsome hair hung by his ear, making his skin seem even fairer than snow. Chapter 1609. Hua Jin's voice was as gentle as a clear spring, youthful and magnetic. He was very close to her. No matter how Yun Shirshir tried to avoid him, he would still come up to her and stick to her side. She came back to her senses abruptly and followed him. There were many supporting roles and extras on the set. Among them, many were Hua Jin's fans. Lethal Beauty was recruiting extras for the sake of Hua Jin being the male lead. Many of them did not want to be paid to join the cast, all for the sake of being able to catch a glimpse of the most handsome man in ancient costume from the nearest distance. Hence, when Yun Shirshir and Hua Jin walked one after another, many people cast strange and passionate gazes at them. Yun Shirshir was very sensitive. When she realized that there were many piercing gazes on her, she became even more annoyed with Hua Jin. She originally admired Hua Jin's costume. However, this handsome man who looked noble and otherworldly was actually like this in private. He seemed to like to be ambiguous. Yun Shirshir frowned. Her footsteps quickened as she walked to her seat and sat down. Hua Jin immediately dragged a small stool over and sat opposite her. "How old are you?" Yun Shirshir flipped open the script and ignored him. Her indifference did not make him retreat. Instead, Hua Jin's eyes were filled with interest. "Shirshir, pay attention to me." Yun Shirshir looked up and glared at him with a distant gaze. "Shirshir is not for you to call me that. Hua Jin, please keep a distance from me." Hua Jin's eyes lit up when he heard this. He smiled slightly. "Shirshir, you're finally talking to me. Why do you want me to keep a distance from you? Though..." He lazily propped his chin with both hands, his beautiful eyes smiling. "I don't want to keep a distance from the person I like." "Hua Jin, you haven't started filming yet." Yun Shirshir suppressed her anger and turned around, not wanting to talk to him. "Go away and don't bother me." "Shirshir, you're so cold to me." Hua Jin leaned forward slightly. "Looking at your asterisk, 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 asterisk appearance. Are you even 20 years old?" She passed a blanket to Shirshir from the side and said with a smile, "Shirshir is already 24. Seeing that she had been betrayed, Yun Shirshir turned pale with fright. She raised her head abruptly and glared at her assistant. Mushi knew that she had misspoken and bit her lower lip in frustration. Hua Jin's eyes widened slightly when he heard this. 24 years old. Then, she was about to reject him when he sweetly called out, "Sister." This man. Yun Shirshir sucked in a deep breath of cold air. She could not hold it in any longer. Ever since she joined the production team, she had always kept her manager's words in mind to keep a distance from Hua Jin. She did not know what kind of demon was in this man's mind, but whenever he saw her, he would stare at her with an unfathomable gaze. Now, he even took the initiative to tease her. She could not chase him away. Did he not know how to read people's expressions? Couldn't he tell that she was annoyed with him? The moment the other supporting actresses saw Hua Jin, they surrounded him with adoration. Hua Jin's beauty could move anyone's heart. Hence, many people on the set wanted to strike up a conversation with Hua Jin. However, Hua Jin seemed to be aloof to everyone, so they knew that they were not interested. Now, they saw Hua Jin taking the initiative to chat with Yun Shirshir, but Yun Shirshir ignored him. Chapter 16:10. Therefore, they mustered their courage and walked forward, surrounding Hua Jin and Yun Shirshir in the middle, trying to blend in with them. Hua Jin, you look so beautiful in ancient costume. Hua Jin, I'm your little fan. I've been following you since you debuted. The supporting actresses blushed and clenched their fists, clearly nervous. Just as they were eagerly anticipating his reply, he merely propped his chin on his hand and gazed at Yun Shirshir's face with a wide smile. It was as if he had not heard their attempts to strike up a conversation with him. Instead, he persistently asked, Sister, why are you ignoring me? Yun Shirshir couldn't take it anymore. Hey, who's your sister? You. Hua Jin's beautiful eyes lit up. You're my sister, Shirshir, Jia. Stop fooling around, okay? Yun Shirshir looked like she was about to break down. I'm very busy. I have to memorize my lines. Today's filming is a scene between you and me. We can practice our lines. Yun Shirshir frowned, but heartlessly rejected. No. Why not? Yun Shirshir was about to flare up. She suddenly looked up and said in a slightly heavier tone, Hey, Hua Jin, you're so annoying. I'm busy memorizing my lines. Can you stop bothering me? Hua Jin was stunned. Then an extremely hurt expression appeared on her face. She looked pitiful, and her peach blossom eyes turned slightly red. The supporting actresses were originally immersed in the awkwardness of Hua Jin ignoring them, but when they saw Hua Jin being wronged and helpless, they immediately felt pity for her and accused her with righteous indignation. Hey, Yun Shirshir, don't go overboard. Why are you bullying Hua Jin like this? Exactly. Big brother Hua Jin was kind enough to help you rehearse your lines. It's fine if you don't appreciate it, but you're being so aggressive and bullying big brother Hua Jin. What's the meaning of this? Don't you know that even though she's a newcomer who just debuted, her background is much better than ours? So now, she knows how to act like a big shot. Hee. Hua Jin didn't put on any airs and kindly wanted to practice with her, but she pretended to be reserved and embarrassed Hua Jin in front of everyone. That's too much. Mocking voices rose one after another. She could not take it anymore. With her hands on her hips, she defended, Hey, what are you doing? What does it have to do with you? You don't have to worry about Shirshir. Have you memorized your lines? Are you familiar with the positioning? If you're so free, then wait for one more shot if you're so capable. Don't NG. Yun Shirshir pressed the back of her hand. That's enough. Mushi, pausing for a moment, she turned around and looked at the cold faces around her. She sneered, My background is none of your concern. If you have the time, you should worry more about yourself, all right? Everyone was stunned. They gritted their teeth and were about to retort when they heard Yun Shirshir say, Can you not block me? You, hey. Hua Jin suddenly spoke. Seeing him speak, a supporting female character immediately said agitatedly, Hua Jin, don't lower yourself to her level. She thinks she's a big shot and doesn't care about you at all. Hua Jin impatiently cut her off. What does it have to do with you? Supporting female character, Hua Jin's face suddenly darkened. I like her personality. This has nothing to do with you guys. Get lost. Chapter 16:11. She had lost all her face, so those who knew what was good for them dispersed. At last, those female supporting characters who were jealous did not forget to glare fiercely at Yun Shirshir. Yun Shirshir's eyes twitched hard. This Hua Jin if placed in ancient times, would be a femme fatale. Hua Jin said, Sure, don't be afraid. With me around, no one can bully you. I don't need you to speak for me. Wasn't it all because of him that she was being ganged up on? This man was really a femme fatale. Qinzhou was indeed right. She should indeed keep a distance from him. She said that he had a formidable sugar daddy behind him. Yun Shishir was even more vigilant now. Not to mention that mysterious sugar daddy, those fans of his in the production team, were people she could not afford to offend. Hence, she said, just don't bother me, okay? Wu, I just like you. Yun Shishir could not take it anymore. Even if she could not afford to offend him, could she not avoid him? Hence, she stood up abruptly. Hua Jin followed suit and asked with a smile, Where are you going? Don't follow me. Hey. Hua Jin hurriedly reached out to hold her hand when he saw her walking quickly. Yun Shishir's body trembled as if she had been scalded by fire. She flung his hand away violently. She turned around angrily and glared at him, only to see that he still had that playful and mischievous expression on his face. She looked around angrily and saw that not many people were paying attention to them. She calmed down and asked with gritted teeth, What is your purpose? Motive? Hua Jin tilted his head and pondered for a moment. His lips suddenly curled into a mischievous smile as he leaned closer to her. His ambiguous breath brushed against her cheek. Is wanting to sleep with you considered my motive? With a loud bang, Yun Shishir's head seemed to explode. What did he mean? She looked at him in disbelief, only to see that his expression was half joking and half serious. She couldn't tell from his tone whether he was serious or joking. But this wasn't a joke, was it? Yun Shishir widened her eyes in shock. She suddenly stretched out her hand and pushed hard. Hua Jin was caught off guard and was pushed to the ground. The ground was made of cement. Hua Jin fell to the ground, and a layer of skin was slightly scratched on his palm. He frowned in pain, but his brows were knitted in an innocent arc. She was as beautiful as a painting. Even when she was frowning, she was still breathtakingly beautiful. This sudden scene attracted everyone's attention. Gu Xiaoyang turned around and saw this scene. He frowned slightly. He put aside the matter at hand and walked over. What happened? Yun Shishir was stunned for a moment. She had lost her mind in a fit of anger and did not expect to have such a strong hand. For a moment, she did not know how to answer. Director Gu, what happened? Nothing. Hua Jin got up from the ground, brushed off the dust on his body, and smiled lightly. I was just fooling around with Shishir. Gu Xiaoyang glanced at him with a sullen expression. The corners of his mouth moved slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he did not say anything. As if he had suppressed some anger, he took a deep breath and said with a frown, Don't play around on the set. There are equipment everywhere. Be careful not to break it and delay the filming process. Yun Shishir was a little surprised. Chapter 16:12. Gu Xiaoyang wanted to protect her, so he warned Hua Jin not to cause any more trouble. Hua Jin glanced at Yun Shishir and then at Gu Xiaoyang before pursing his lips. Got it. Director Gu. Go and get ready. Your scene with Yun Shishir is about to start, Gu Xiaoyang instructed. Hua Jin reluctantly hummed and nodded. However, the moment Gu Xiaoyang turned around, he suddenly leaned forward and planted a kiss on Yun Shishir's cheek. Yun Shishir did not react in time and widened her eyes in shock. By the time she came back to her senses, Hua Jin had already returned to his assistant's side to revise the script. She was angry and frustrated, thinking that Hua Jin was simply unreasonable. He actually stole a kiss from me. Why is this Hua Jin so annoying? Gu Xiaoyang happened to see this scene as well. His lips moved, but he did not say anything. He only reminded Yun Shirshir to get ready for her role, and then went back to work. It seemed that this Hua Jin was not simple. Even the bad-tempered director Gu did not dare to lose his temper in front of him. It seemed that he had a strong backing. Did he do whatever he wanted on set just because he had a sugar daddy's favor? Yun Shirshir trembled in anger. Beside her, Mushi looked at her with envy. She clenched her little fists and gritted her teeth in jealousy. Shirshir, you have good luck with men. Hua Jin took the initiative to kiss you. I'm so envious of you. Yun Shirshir glared at her weakly. Seeing that she was really angry, Mushi felt guilty and quickly explained, Shirshir, don't be angry. I was just joking. Don't take it seriously. Mushi, this joke isn't funny at all. Yun Shirshir lost her usual calmness. For the first time in her life, she showed anger in front of Mushi. Knowing that she was really trying her best, the assistant hurriedly apologized. I'm sorry, Shirshir. I didn't care about the occasion and made a joke. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Yun Shirshir looked in the direction of Hua Jin with a complicated expression. Then she took out a soft towel from her sleeve and fiercely wiped the place where Hua Jin had just kissed. The next scene officially began filming. Yun Shirshir tried her best to immerse herself in her character. However, when it came to her scene with Hua Jin, just standing in front of him and thinking about how he had teased her earlier, she couldn't help but feel angry. He didn't manage to pass a few of them. His eyes, emotions, and the tone of his lines were all wrong. It should have been an expression of incomparable adoration, but the camera caught a trace of annoyance in her eyes. Because of this, Gu Xiaoyang completely lost his temper and scolded Yun Shirshir in front of everyone. Lin Ji finished her makeup and rushed to the set. When she saw Yun Shirshir in a sorry state, she was secretly delighted. Serves her right. Seeing Yun Shirshir being scolded so harshly, she openly mocked her. Yun Shirshir felt aggrieved. In the end, Gu Xiaoyang lost his patience and stopped filming for this scene. He waved his hand and said, You're not even in the right mood. Why are you wasting my time? Everyone's time is precious. You spent so much energy on the script, and in the end you acted like this. Who are you trying to fool? With that, he waved his hand and dismissed Yun Shirshir. Yun Shirshir felt that her condition had been ruined, so she asked for leave from the director and went back. This Hua Jin is really despicable. Chapter 16:13. Damn it, if it wasn't for him, she would have been able to perform well. Yun Shirshir was so angry that when she returned to the hotel, she was still a little depressed. She was a perfectionist. When she was filming, she hoped to get the director's approval. She had worked so hard, but because of Hua Jin, all her preparations had gone down the drain. Yun Shirshir changed into her casual clothes and sat on the bed. Her anger had yet to subside. The doorbell suddenly rang. She frowned, got up and walked to the door. Through the peephole, she saw a man in a suit standing at the door. His posture was elegant and respectful. Standing behind him were two elegantly dressed women. They were holding a set of things in their hands. Through the peephole, she couldn't see clearly. Yun Shirshir asked warily, Who is it? The man replied, Miss Yun, please open the door. I was sent by Chairman Mu to bring you to a place. Yun Shirshir hesitated for a moment. Seeing that this man didn't look like a dangerous person, she opened the door. Just as she opened the door, the man saw her and bowed in a gentlemanly manner. Good afternoon, Your Highness the Princess. May I know if it's convenient to go in now? Yun Shirshir was confused by his strange way of addressing her. However, she still nodded and said, It's convenient. The man smiled and signaled with his eyes. The two women walked into the room politely, but the man didn't come in. After closing the door, Yun Shirshir looked at them strangely and asked suspiciously, "You were sent by Muyajatu?" "Yes, your Royal Highness." Yun Shirshir was confused by their way of addressing her. She smiled awkwardly and didn't know what to say. "What Royal Highness?" "Your Royal Highness, please change into a dress first." One of the women carried a gown and greeted her with a perfect smile. Yun Shirshir frowned. She didn't know what this Muyaja was up to. Why did he want her to change into a dress for no reason? Was he bringing her to a banquet? If that was the case, why didn't he inform her in advance? As a result, she was caught off guard. She glanced at the gown. When the gown was unfolded, Yun Shirshir was shocked. What a beautiful dress! The champagne-colored gown had a skirt that reached the ground. The design of the flat-shouldered gown seemed to have been tailor-made for her, revealing her jade-like collarbone and graceful neck. The chest area was adorned with a few pink roses that extended from the waistline all the way to the hem of the skirt. The flower adornment was beautiful and flawless. The petals were especially lifelike, almost to the point of passing them off as genuine. If one did not examine them carefully, one would not be able to tell that the petals on the dress were fake. "Your Highness, please change into your formal attire." Yun Shirshir hesitated for a moment, then nodded. After changing into the gown in the bedroom, she walked in front of the full-length mirror. She was like a flower fairy standing in the mirror, refined and beautiful. The two women went up to her and helped her to the dressing mirror. One was in charge of her hair, and the other was in charge of her makeup. An hour later, she was dressed up like a princess from a fairy tale, noble and elegant. This Yun Shirshir looked at herself in the mirror. The person in the mirror really looked like a princess from a fairy tale movie. But this dreamy crystal makeup was not suitable for a banquet. Chapter 16:14. Through the window, the scenery of the street flashed by quickly. She didn't know where the car was taking her. She was in a daze the entire way. When she got out of the carriage, the sky was getting dark and the night was beautiful. When she lifted the hem of her dress and got out of the car, the scene in front of her shocked her greatly. The carriage stopped at the entrance of Fairy Tale Valley. Fairy Tale Valley, a theme park that looked like a fairy tale wonderland. Yun Shirshir had brought Yu here before, so she had a deep impression of Fairy Tale Valley. Fairy Tale Valley was closed for a period of time because of the shooting incident. After some repairs, it was put back into operation. However, at this moment, the Fairy Tale Valley in front of her eyes was completely different from the one she remembered. The night was getting late, and the moonlight was like silver in the starry sky. Under the illumination of the starry sky, the iconic castle of Fairy Tale Valley stood in the distance between the canyons. It was resplendent and majestic, just like a medieval European royal castle. It was retro and luxurious, and it was magnificent as the lights constantly changed colors. The huge Fairy Tale Valley was surrounded by a classical and romantic atmosphere. There was a crystal carriage parked at the entrance. The attendant stood beside the white horse respectfully and gently welcomed her. "Your Highness, beautiful princess, please get on the carriage." Yun Shirshir was slightly stunned when she saw the hand reaching out to her. Her brain stopped working for a few seconds before she slowly reached out and allowed the attendant to welcome her into the crystal carriage. This is what's going on. Yun Shirshir sat in the carriage, her thoughts still in a mess. Everything happened too suddenly. She was still in a daze and didn't know what was going on. The crystal carriage passed through the garden path that was covered with pink rose petals. Yun Shirshir was stunned, but she was stunned by the dreamy scene in front of her. She couldn't help but lean against the window and enjoy the fragrant breeze. So beautiful, so dreamy. It was really like a dream. The breeze blew, and the petals on the ground were swept up, invading her face. Yun Shirshir brushed her face with her fingertips and gently rubbed the petals on her face. She sniffed lightly, and the fragrance assailed her nose. On the road, there were many tourists coming and going. When the crowd saw the crystal carriage approaching, they all widened their eyes in amazement. They looked at Yun Shirshir, who was sitting on the crystal carriage, with jealousy. Some of the young girls couldn't help but chase after the carriage, as they were pleasantly surprised. Wow, it's a crystal carriage. I've only seen this kind of carriage in fairy tale movies. It was a real crystal carriage, so beautiful. I want to sit down too. The woman in the carriage is so beautiful, like a princess. She looks like a flower fairy. There are so many flower petals on her body. How mesmerizing. This woman looks a little familiar. I feel like I've seen her somewhere before. When Yun Shirshir heard this, she was so shocked that she retracted her head back into the carriage. The crystal carriage slowly passed through the romantic garden arch, and a huge Ferris wheel came into view. Under the background of the bright, starry sky, the huge Ferris wheel slowly rotated along with the music. The attendants helped Yun Shirshir down from the crystal carriage. In an instant, it was as if several beams of light from the sky were projected onto her body. The beautiful lights surrounded her, so much so that when she stood in the middle of the bright light, it made her surroundings seem dark. Chapter 16:15. For a moment, she couldn't see her surroundings clearly. She took a small step forward, but the light followed her. Yun Shirshir stopped in her tracks and was a little surprised. Just as she was at a loss of what to do, she suddenly saw a tall and slender figure slowly walking towards her from not far away. Yun Shirshir widened her eyes. Standing in the light, she couldn't see clearly. In her curious and surprised gaze, a man in a snow-white suit appeared in front of her, like a god. His tall and handsome figure pierced through the light and appeared in front of her. Yun Shirshir's mouth gaped open in shock as she uttered a single word. Muyaja's appearance gave her a dreamy surprise. He was dressed in a medieval aristocratic suit. His posture was noble and arrogant, and his aura was extraordinary. He was like a Prince Charming who had appeared in front of her without warning. She had imagined countless dreamy scenes, but now they were displayed in front of her without warning. She couldn't come back to her senses for a long time. Yun Shirshir stared at the handsome man in front of her in a daze. She was a little speechless. Did he prepare everything in this fairy tale-like fantasy for her? Yun Shirshir's body stiffened slightly. In front of her, the strong light left a deep impression on his exquisite facial features. In the dreamy light and shadow, his handsome face was like an ancient Greek sculpture, handsome as if it was cast. Amidst the gentle breeze, his black hair brushed past his ears, his proud jawline, and his deep, serene eyes were breathtaking. His thin lips gently curved into a charming arc. Muyaja gently reached out to her and opened his palm. He raised his eyebrows slightly and gave her a silent invitation with his eyes. She raised her hand and placed it in his palm. Suddenly, her breathing became tight. Yun Shirshir couldn't believe that everything in front of her was real, so much so that she asked a silly question at this romantic moment. Muyaja, she looked up and her eyes flashed. Is it really you? What answered her was the man's powerful palm. He held her hand and took the opportunity to pull her into his embrace. Yun Shirshir was caught off guard and fell into his embrace. Her swaying body was supported by his strong arms. She raised her head and looked into the man's deep and doting eyes. Little fool, it's me. Little fool, it's me. This intimate and affectionate form of address made her slightly startled. Just a few hours ago, Hua Jin had called her that. She felt impatient and didn't like him calling her that. However, when Muyaja called her little idiot, it actually made her feel a trace of warmth and sweetness in her heart. Yun Shirshir still couldn't believe everything in front of her eyes. She was afraid that in the blink of an eye, she would wake up from her dream. When she woke up, she would still be on set, sitting in a deserted hotel. She couldn't help but stretch out her arm and gently wrap it around his waist, greedily longing for this moment. Behind them, the Ferris wheel stopped. Muyaja grabbed her chin and dotted her lips. He asked gently, "Do you like the Ferris wheel?" Yun Shirshir nodded and pursed her lips into a smile. "I like it. Do you want to sit?" "Yes." Muyaja smiled and held her hand as they boarded the Ferris wheel. There were only two of them on the huge Ferris wheel. Chapter 16:16. As the Ferris wheel slowly rose into the air, the spectacular scenery of Fairy Tale Valley could be seen. The two of them sat in the spacious cabin, and Yun Shirshir looked very surprised. "Muyaja, did you prepare all these?" Muyaja saw her childlike expression and couldn't help but laugh. "Is this your first time?" "Yes." Yun Shirshir's expression changed slightly, and she looked a little lonely. She pursed her lips dejectedly. "This is my first time. I've never had the chance to sit here before. It's rare to come to a place like an amusement park." He leaned back gracefully. "Do you like it?" Yun Shirshir smiled in satisfaction. "I like it. I really like it." In the hearts of young girls, there was always a princess dream. They dreamed of becoming the prince in their hearts, Cinderella. Yun Shirshir was no exception. But fairy tales were fairy tales, and dreams were just dreams. That crystal carriage is really beautiful, just like in fairy tales. Have you seen Cinderella before? No, the carriage in Cinderella is a carriage made from a pumpkin by the fairy godmother. Muyaja merely watched her gesticulate excitedly without saying a word. Yun Shirshir said longingly, "When I was young, I also dreamed that when night fell and the Ferris wheel rose to the peak, I would be able to see the beautiful starry sky with my beloved prince." She was too embarrassed to say what she wanted to say next. When the Ferris wheel rose to the sky, fireworks would be dazzling in the starry sky, and the prince would take out a beautiful diamond ring, propose to her, and kiss her in the beautiful night. She only hid these beautiful fantasies in her diary. She smiled embarrassedly. "This dream must be very silly, right?" "I think so too." Muyaja's lips curled into a smile as he lowered his head to light a cigarette. Holding the cigarette between his lips and smiling eyes, he actually made her heart palpitate with excitement. Yun Shirshir's cheeks burned strangely. She turned her face away guiltily, but secretly glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. Usually, he liked to wear black shirts, but today he was wearing a noble suit and looked very handsome. So much so that she was embarrassed to look him in the eye. Muyaja leaned back in his seat. His fair and flawless skin, his gentle gaze, and his thick and long eyelashes intertwined with each other. There was a faint dimple at the corner of his lips. When he smiled, it was very beautiful, revealing a trace of freshness and purity. It was the complete opposite of his expressionless face, making people involuntarily want to get close to him. She didn't know why, but she didn't like men who smoked, yet she didn't dislike him. She was even a little obsessed with how he looked when he smoked. Yun Shirshir stared blankly and couldn't help but curve her lips. Muyaja suddenly raised his eyes and looked at her calmly. Yun Shirshir was startled. She turned her head abruptly, only to find that the Ferris wheel had already risen to the highest point. She stood up excitedly and leaned against the windowsill. She looked up at the starry sky and held her face in her hands in amazement. "It's so beautiful." Yun Shirshir smiled happily like a child. Muyaja took a deep puff of his cigarette and put it out. He got up casually and slowly approached her from behind. Aware of the movement behind her, Yun Shirshir smiled and turned her face. Suddenly, her chin was gently lifted by slender fingers. Chapter 16-17. Muyaja's perfect, handsome face inched closer to hers. His thin, moist lips gently covered the corner of her lips. The faint smell of tobacco permeated between his lips and teeth. Together with his unique fragrance, it refreshed her heart and mind. Yun Shirshir was stunned. Her eyes suddenly widened, and she furrowed her brows in disbelief. Muyaja covered her eyes in dissatisfaction and gently lowered his eyelids. She tossed and turned in his soft kiss. His deep affection for her, which seeped into her bones, made her heart pound like thunder for a moment. Outside the window, the moonlight flowed gently, and the mottled shadows of the stars contrasted with the white light. His face seemed to be plated with a layer of moonlight, making his skin look even more jade-like. Through the gaps between her fingers, Yun Shirshir carefully opened her eyes. Muyaja's beautiful face was faintly discernible. The Ferris wheel slowly rotated, and she slowly closed her eyes. Muyaja imprisoned her in front of his chest. He lifted her chin with one hand and stroked the soft hair by the side of her face with the other. The tip of his tongue gently hooked into the gap between her lips and her pearly white teeth. The tips of their tongues seemed to touch each other. Yun Shirshir's cheeks suddenly flushed red, and her hands moved restlessly in front of his chest. She seemed to be a little nervous. She suddenly felt the scene in front of her was extremely familiar. Where had she seen it before? Yun Shirshir was a little confused, but she couldn't pinpoint what was wrong. Muyaja comfortingly grabbed her wrist and slowly moved it to his waist. Thus, she obediently wrapped her arms around his waist. Their fingers interlocked, but her knuckles were white from nervousness. A bunch of fireworks suddenly rose in the sky and bloomed beautifully. Muyaja lifted his head. Yun Shirshir lowered her head shyly and bit her lip hard. He smiled and lifted her chin, giving her a light peck on the lips. Shirshir, marry me, Muyaja's voice was slightly deep as he slowly said those words. He raised his eyebrows and gazed at her face gently. Shirshir, marry me. Those words sounded so pleasant when he said them in such a mellow and magnetic voice. His large palm grabbed her hand. Immediately after, a circle of coldness stuck to her ring finger and slid down to the base of her finger. Yun Shirshir's heart seemed to have skipped a beat, and her eyes kept widening. His sudden proposal caught her off guard. So much so that after Muyaja said that sentence, her mind seemed to explode violently. White light flashed, and it was as if she was flying to the clouds. Happiness came too suddenly. Caught off guard, she was stunned by the surprise that fell from the sky. Marry me, okay? Muyaja's devilish lips curled into a doting smile. Let's be together forever, okay? Sure. He stopped her from continuing. Let me finish. She pursed her lips and held her breath, wondering what he was going to say next. I swear, Muyaja took a deep breath and lowered his head. He touched the tip of her nose and rubbed it intimately. When he opened his eyes again, his gaze was deep. I'll use my life to dote on you and protect you. Yun Shirshir's red lips trembled slightly. She could not help but feel like crying because of him. I'll dote on you forever. Are you willing to be my little princess forever? Behind him, a bunch of fireworks rose and bloomed beautifully in the sky. Muyaja held her hand gracefully. Yun Shirshir's gaze fell on her ring finger. Chapter 16-18. It was a 1-carat pink diamond ring, exquisite and luxurious. Yun Shirshir recognized it at a glance. This was a rare, custom-made pink diamond from Dairy Ring. Dairy Ring was a romantic luxury brand. Men could only customize one diamond ring in their lifetime based on their ID card. A man could only customize one diamond ring in his lifetime It symbolized the most romantic promise. The ring he put on for her was from the Dairy Ring With You series. It was worth 8 figures. Yun Shirshir's eyes suddenly moistened. She was touched, but at the same time, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How could this man be so domineering in his proposal? He put the ring on her ring finger without any explanation. It was obvious that he wouldn't allow her to refuse. She could feel that in his eyes. She had really become a little princess who was doted on by thousands. She really couldn't believe everything that was happening in front of her eyes. It should have only appeared in her diary. Everything that was in her fantasy. Getting on the Ferris wheel with the person she loved, proposing to her in the sky full of fireworks, begging her to marry him. This was clearly a beautiful fairy tale plot, but it actually appeared in her life. Muyaja saw that she was so touched and happy that she lost control. His heart ached a little, but in an instant, it softened beyond belief. Shirshir, promise me. Muyaja cupped her face, his gaze sincere. He wasn't a man who understood romance. Therefore, perhaps tonight's romantic proposal was the most romantic proposal he could imagine. In business, he had always been cold, decisive, and wise. However, he had always been lacking in romance cells. Therefore, perhaps in her eyes, even a proposal seemed so domineering that she couldn't refuse. However, he really wanted to protect her for the rest of her life. He had prepared for this proposal for a long time. Everything was done by him personally, all for the sake of giving her a dreamy surprise on this day. Perhaps in the past, he also couldn't believe that he would secretly spend so much effort for a woman, just for a proposal. As long as he waved his hand, there probably wouldn't be a woman who would refuse his proposal. In the past, marriage to him was nothing more than a ritual and a shackle. But now, because of her, he had changed his view of marriage. If he had to say that marriage was a shackle, then he was willing to be trapped. Trapped by her. Yun Shirshir was crying and laughing at the same time. She nodded and agreed. Okay. Idiot. Yun Shirshir didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What I mean is, I'm willing. He had formally proposed to her, and she was willing to marry him. She was willing, she was really willing. These words kept repeating in Yun Shirshir's mind, and her mood also climbed to the clouds along with the gorgeous fireworks in the night sky. When Muyaja heard this, a satisfied smile bloomed on his face. He hugged her in his arms and kissed her passionately under the fireworks in the sky. The Ferris wheel climbed to the highest point. Yun Shirshir nestled in Muyaja's arms and looked at the beautiful night sky outside the window. She couldn't help hugging her arms tighter. Do you know, right now, I feel like I'm in a dream. Until now, I still can't believe it. Chapter 16:19. When I was young, I yearned for the princes and princesses in fairy tales. I fantasized that one day I would sit on a Ferris wheel with my beloved, and he would propose to me with fireworks in the sky. Halfway through her speech, she suddenly felt that something was amiss. Yun Shirshir furrowed her brows and glared at him. Hey, did you peek at my diary? Muyaja's face showed a hint of awkwardness at being exposed. Seeing his evasive expression, Yun Shirshir cupped his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her directly. Tell me the truth. Did you secretly flip through my diary? She had the habit of keeping a diary when she was young. Hence, be it her mood, her ideals, her thoughts, or even her trivial matters, she liked to record them in her diary. Yun Shirshir felt that something was amiss no matter how she thought about it. Today's proposal was similar to the one she had imagined in her diary. Could it be that this man had secretly peeked at her diary and directed this scene? Muyaja coughed awkwardly and then hummed in acknowledgement. He had indeed secretly flipped through her diary. but that was because Yu had accidentally left it behind when she was tidying up her things. He did not know that it was a diary, so he picked it up and flipped through a few pages until he reached one of them. On top of it were the notes of Yun Shirshir when she was young. He skimmed through it and memorized her wish in just a few glances. Muyaja told her everything truthfully. Yun Shirshir did not show it on her face when she heard it, but she was very touched inside. Muyaja, she lowered her head and hesitated for a moment before smiling. Thank you. She had to thank him for silently fulfilling a wish of hers that she could only dream of. The Ferris wheel descended. When the door opened, fireworks rose from the ground. Yun Tianyu and Xiao Chen appeared before her like two little angels, holding birthday cakes in their hands. Mommy, happy birthday. The two children's tender voices were pure and cute. Yun Shirshir was pleasantly surprised once again, so much so that she stared blankly at the scene in front of her, unable to react in time. So today was her birthday? She didn't realize it, but she didn't expect the two little guys to remember her birthday. They even prepared a cake and a gift in advance. There was such a big surprise. Yun Shirshir was so moved that tears gushed out of her eyes. She had been on set for so long and had been separated from the two little guys for so long. She missed them very much. Yun Shirshir lowered her body slightly and opened her arms. My two darlings, Mommy missed you so much. Mommy. Little Ichen let out a whimper as tears welled up in his eyes as he threw himself into her embrace. You couldn't help but laugh. He pursed his lips and walked to Yun Shirshir's side a little bashfully. He put the crown he made on her head. Dear Mommy, happy birthday. I hope you will be happy forever. You will love you forever. He cupped her face and kissed her affectionately on the cheek. Yun Shirshir was touched and pulled him into her embrace. She hugged the two little lads tightly, unwilling to let go. Mommy missed you guys so much. Xiao Chen heard that, and a few drops of tears fell. Mommy, why didn't you come home for so long? I missed you so much. Chapter 16:20. Humph. Mommy, even if you know you're wrong, I won't forgive you so easily. Xiao Chen pretended to be reserved as he counted with his fingers. Yun Shirshir pursed her lips and asked teasingly, Then, Xiao Chen, what do I have to do to make you forgive Mommy? Unless. Xiao Chen blinked mysteriously, tapped his cheek, and smiled. Mommy, give me a kiss. Yun Shirshir was amused by him. Then she kissed him hard on the cheek. Xiao Chen was satisfied. Then he took out the handmade gift that he had hidden behind his back and held it in front of her. It was a bouquet of handmade roses. Xiao Chen had specially asked a handmade teacher to make it for him. He thought that since it was his mommy's birthday, he had to give her a happy present. After much thought, he decided to give her a bouquet of handmade roses. Handmade flowers would never wither. The meaning behind the bouquet was that he hoped his mommy would be like a beautiful flower that would bloom forever. Yun Shirshir held the bouquet in her hands. Her heart was filled with warmth. Xiao Chen's handwork skills were not as good as Yu's. He was a little clumsy. When he was in school, he did not like to do handwork. Hence, the handmade flowers were a little rough. However, it was obvious that he had put a lot of effort into it. Every edge was carefully trimmed and neat. The coloring was also very serious. Although there were not enough details, the overall product was very beautiful. Yun Shirshir loved it very much. She looked at the flowers with a smile on her face. She felt a sense of satisfaction that she had never felt before. Xiao Chen asked nervously, Mommy, do you like the flowers I made? Of course I like them. Mommy really likes the gift you gave me. Really? Xiao Chen was instantly elated. He was so proud that he wanted to fly to the clouds. Mommy had praised his handwork. Mommy liked the flowers he made. His little tail was about to curl up into the sky. Yun Shirshir's affirmation was better than anyone else's praise. Mu Yaja's eyes twitched as he watched from the side. On the way there, he praised Xiao Yichen and said that his handiwork had improved, but Xiao Yichen was still unhappy. Yun Shirshir's praise actually made him so proud. Unfair. You was jealous. She quickly grabbed Yun Shirshir's arm and walked over to the cake. Then she said proudly, "Mommy, this is Yu's birthday cake." As he spoke, he snorted and glanced at Xiao Yichen provocatively. The latter crossed his arms in front of his chest unhappily. Clearly, he didn't think much of it. His eyes seemed to say, "Mommy would definitely like the flowers I sent her." Yu replied with a cold stare, naive. "Mommy would definitely like the cake. I made the most." Yun Shirshir walked over to the cake and saw that Yu had meticulously kneaded sugar figurines. Mu Yaja, Yun Shirshir, Yu, and Xiao Yichen's family of 4 were used as the template. The figurines were pink and sticky, cute and charming. Xiao Yichen's and Yun Shirshir's facial features were especially lively. However, Yun Shirshir's gaze landed on Mu Yaja's face. Uffed! She burst out laughing. Not only was Mu Yaja's face fiercely pinched by Yu, but his mouth was also tilted to one side due to the accident when he was making the cake. Ha ha ha! The expression of the sugar figurines was so funny that Yun Shirshir couldn't help but burst out laughing. Mu Yaja walked over and took a look. His face darkened, and he rubbed his forehead with a headache. Chapter 16:21. "Daddy, you really can't blame me for this." You explained innocently. Who asked Daddy to suddenly appear behind him when he was concentrating on making the cake, giving him a big fright. He was so frightened that he inadvertently drew his mouth crooked. Yun Shirshir laughed until tears rolled down her cheeks. Mu Yaja's sugar figurine's expression was so creepy that she couldn't stop laughing. "Idiot, stop laughing." Mu Yaja felt a little embarrassed. The other 3 sugar figurines were so cute, but his sugar figurine had a fierce and dry expression. Most importantly, its mouth was crooked to one side. It was unbelievably ugly. He felt a little wronged. When he saw Yun Shirshir laughing again, he had the urge to hide the sugar figurine. However, he couldn't. Yu had painstakingly made this cake for her. Otherwise, he would have destroyed it long ago. Seeing that his mother was amused, Yu was also infected by her happy and joyful mood. His lips could not help but curl into a smile, and he actually laughed along with her. Xiao Yichen had secretly taken a look at the cake, and Mu Yaja's ugly but cute sugar figurine. He had already laughed along the way. However, now that Yun Shirshir and Yu were laughing, he couldn't help but laugh too. The 3 of them laughed together. Mu Yaja's expression darkened. He glared at Yu warningly. Yu understood. He cleared his throat and coughed. He immediately stopped laughing and said to Yun Shirshir, "Mommy, don't laugh anymore. Let's blow out the candles. Okay?" "Okay." Yu immediately took out the digital candles and stuck them on the cake. Then he lit the candles with a match. The flames flickered, illuminating the faces of the 4 people. "Xiao Yichen, let's sing a happy birthday song to Mommy together." Xiao Yichen immediately reacted and clapped his hands. "Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to my dear Mommy. Happy birthday to you." Yu said excitedly, "Mommy, hurry up and make a wish." Yun Shirshir immediately clasped her hands together and closed her eyes sincerely. She smiled and silently made a wish. Then she blew out the candles. "Phew, wow, that's awesome." Little Yichen jumped up and down in excitement. his saliva almost flowing out of his mouth uncontrollably. Suddenly, he curiously tugged at his mother's sleeve and probed, "Mommy, what birthday wish did you make?" Yu gave him a hard knock on the head. "You big idiot. Wishes won't come true if you say them out loud." "Oh, I see." Xiao Yichen couldn't hide his disappointment. However, when he thought about how he was going to eat the cake, he immediately became happy again. "I can finally eat the cake." As he spoke, he greedily reached out his little hand to grab the little sugar figurine on the cake. Yu hit his head again. "Idiot! Mommy hasn't cut the cake yet. You're not allowed to eat it." Xiao Yichen groaned and held his forehead in pain. He blinked his big, watery eyes sadly and looked at Yu as if he was silently complaining. Yu also stared at him. Yun Shir didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why was it that Xiao Yichen, the younger one, didn't act like an older brother, like Yu? Xiao Yichen was more timid. Chapter 16:22. "Mommy, hurry up and cut the cake. That way, the birthday ceremony will be complete." Okay, this little bun really knew more than she did. Mu Yaja walked forward and held her hand. Yun Shir turned around and smiled at him. Then they cut the cake together. The two little guys clapped and cheered. "Yu, can we eat now?" Little Yichen stared at him greedily, his saliva almost dripping from his mouth as he stared at the cake. Yu glanced at him in disdain and said expressionlessly, "Please wipe your saliva first." Xiao Yichen was confused. Yu sighed and rubbed his forehead. "Stupid brother, why are you so greedy?" "Because Yu's cake looks so tempting. It must be delicious." Xiao Yichen said, "Honestly." Yu was speechless for a moment. Then he sighed and took the initiative to cut a piece of cake and passed it to him. "You, little greedy cat, eat it. I don't want this. I want the sugar figurine on the cake." Yu pondered for a moment and asked curiously, "Which one do you want?" Xiao Yichen was drooling. "I want yours." Yu immediately said, "No." "Why not? Can't you eat yours?" Xiao Yichen felt wronged and said, "Mine doesn't look as good as yours." "Stingy Yu, let me eat your sugar figurine." As he spoke, he started to act coquettishly. Yu, on the other hand, stood firm and shook his head vigorously. No, I won't let you eat mine." "Humph, Yu stingy. Then I'll eat Mommy's sugar figurine." As he spoke, he reached out his hand and grabbed the cutest sugar figurine that Yu had spent the most effort on. Smack! Yu slapped his outstretched hand away with a look of disdain. "No," Xiao Yichen said dejectedly. "What's wrong now? You can't eat Mommy's either. Why don't you eat Daddy's food?" Yu said. When Xiao Yichen heard this, he felt wronged and mumbled unwillingly, "I don't want to eat Daddy's little candy figurine. She's so ugly, I can't bear to eat her." Yun Shir and Yu burst out laughing at the same time. At the side, Mu Yaja's face was extremely gloomy. There seemed to be cold air around him. Xiao Yichen shuddered violently. When he turned around, he saw Mu Yaja's incomparably frightening expression. He immediately explained earnestly, "Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm not saying that you're ugly. I'm saying that the little sugar figurine on the cake is ugly. Don't be angry." Yun Shir, Mu Yaja's face darkened even more. Why did this little guy have to explain to him so seriously? Was he born to be a comedian? Yu said, "Xiao Yichen, be good, and let Mommy choose a candy figurine first. It'll be your turn after that." As he said this, he turned around and said, seriously, "Mommy, pick a candy figurine and try it." Yun Shir said in surprise, Are you talking about the candy figurines standing on the cake?" "Yes." "Can it really be eaten?" She was still a little surprised. This was the first time she had seen a candy cake. The 4 little candy figurines that Yu had molded were lifelike lively, and adorable. She did not expect that these candy figurines could be eaten. Lifelike. Except for Muyaja's candy figurine. Chapter 16:23. Anyway, she didn't want to eat his little sugar figurines. You looked at her with disdain. Stupid mommy, of course you can eat them. These figurines are made with sugar. The insides are filled with sugar, and the outside is coated with icing. They're very sweet. However, this is my first time trying to make a sugar cake, and I haven't tried it yet. I don't know how it tastes. Mommy, try it first. Yun Shirshir nodded. Then she reached out her hand and picked between the 4 figurines with her fingertips. At that moment, she couldn't decide which one to eat. Although these figurines were made with sugar, they could still break their necks in one bite. Just thinking about it was a little creepy. Yu suddenly asked, Mommy, what flavor do you like? Flavor? Yu blinked and said proudly, Yes, I made these 4 figurines with different flavors. There were different flavors of sugar and sugar, so there were many flavors to choose from. He purposely chose 4 flavors and made 4 little sugar figurines. Therefore, each of the 4 little sugar figurines had a different flavor and were unique. When Muyaja heard this, he looked at him in surprise. This kid was full of tricks. There were actually 4 different flavors of sugar figurines. Oh, Yun Shirshir was interested. She pointed at Xiaoi Chen and asked, What flavor does Xiaoi Chen have? Strawberry. Then what about yours? My little sugar figurines are made with milk flavor. Yu smirked. Muyaja asked curiously, Then what about mine? Daddy's is made with chocolate. Xiaoi Chen was also very interested. He asked greedily, Then what about Mommy's? Yu smiled mysteriously. That's a secret. Humph. Wow. With Yu's tantalizing words, Xiaoi Chen's desire grew. The unknown and the most mysterious were always the most desirable. Xiaoi Chen wanted to try the flavor of his mommy's little sugar figurines even more. Yun Shirshir glanced at Xiaoi Chen. She saw that he was staring at her little sugar figurines greedily. Therefore, she picked one of Xiaoi Chen's little sugar figurines and left hers for the 2 little guys to try. She raised Xiaoi Chen's little sugar figurines and waved it in front of him. She pretended to be fierce and said, Xiaoi Chen, Mommy is going to start eating you. As she spoke, she deliberately and viciously bit the sugar doll's little hand forcefully. Little Chen playfully held his arm and said pitifully, Oh, Mommies, don't. His exaggerated and amusing reaction made it seem as if she had bitten him alive. Muyaja's lips curled into a smile as he was amused by his son's clown side. You said cheekily from the side, Mommy, bite his head. Yun Shirshir raised her eyebrows and bit Xiaoi Chen's head. Xiaoi Chen immediately pretended to be in pain and held his head. My head seems to have been bitten by something. It hurts. Ha ha. Yun Shirshir couldn't help but laugh. All right, Xiaoi Chen, Mommy won't tease you anymore. Then she took her little sugar figurine from the cake and squatted in front of Xiaoi Chen. She handed it to him. Xiaoi Chen, Mommy's little sugar figurine is for you, okay? Chapter 16:24. Thank you, Mommy. I love Mommy so much. Yu immediately said indignantly, Idiot, why aren't you thanking me? I made the cake. Xiaoi Chen smiled. Thank you, Yu. Yu was finally satisfied. Yun Shirshir looked at him lovingly. Xiaoi Chen, try Yu's cooking. Okay. Xiaoi Chen couldn't wait to take a bite. The poor little sugar figurine was bitten off by him, revealing a cross-section of its head. It was actually rainbow candy paste. Wow. Xiaoi Chen's mouth was full as the sweet candy paste filled his mouth. The delicious sweetness filled his mouth, and he was so happy that he wanted to cry. It's so delicious. This is the most delicious cake I've ever eaten. Xiao Yichen was pleasantly surprised. He danced with joy and excitement. Yin Shishir glanced at it and was also surprised. She didn't expect her little sugar figurine to be made with rainbow candy paste. It had to be mentioned that the candy paste only had one flavor. However, Yu had spent a lot of effort on her sugar figurine. He purposely mixed different flavors together. The purple one was grape, the red one was strawberry, the green one was apple, the orange one was orange, the yellow one was lemon, the red one was coffee, and the blue one was blueberry. The 7 flavors implied that in his heart, his mommy was the most perfect woman in the world. There were a total of 7 flavors. In order to prevent the candy paste from melting and mixing the flavors, he specially used a sugar coating to separate the flavors. He spent about an hour just to make this sugar figurine. From kneading it into shape to coloring it and finally to the finished product, he was especially serious. Yin Shishir was so touched. She knew very well how much time and energy it took to bake. In the past, when she had a personal activity in school, she had also tried to bake. However, she was clumsy, and the biscuits she made were all burnt. Just by looking at this beautiful cake, Yin Shishir could imagine you standing on a stool in the kitchen with his head lowered, carefully kneading the cream in his hands, imagining her appearance as he carefully made the cake. A warm current seemed to flow into his heart. Today was really what a pleasant surprise. This was probably the happiest birthday she had ever had in her life. Yin Shishir was satisfied. Xiao Yichen raised the candy figurine to Yin Shishir's lips and said considerately, "Mommy, this candy figurine made by you is so delicious. You should try it too." You is also looking forward to it. "Mommy, try it and see how it tastes." "Yes." Yin Shishir nodded and took a bite under the serious gazes of the 2 little munchkins. When the 7-colored candy paste entered her mouth, it instantly overflowed with sweetness, filling her mouth and teeth. The candy paste made by Yu was sweet, but not greasy, soft, but not sticky. It was just the right amount of sweetness, but it made one want to taste it again. Yin Shishir had never eaten such a delicious cake and was pleasantly surprised. "It's so delicious," she said honestly. How did you come up with it?" "I bought a baking book and learned a little from it." After pausing for a moment, Yu said proudly, "However, Mommy's candy figurine wasn't learned from the book. I created the rainbow candy paste myself. It's really great."